Have you finished packing? Please hurry up. We're planning to renovate your room after you leave. The eldest son's wife, with a mix of impatience and excitement, urged us on. She seemed thrilled about finally making the house her own. It was clear she didn't know the half of it. I glanced at my husband, who silently signaled me to hold back, then offered a gentle smile to his brother's wife. Sorry for the delay. We'll be out by tomorrow. Since there will be workers around, it's best if you and Emily stay in your room. We're leaving behind the shared furniture and appliances. Our things are mostly just bedding and a few dressers. It shouldn't take more than 30 minutes to move everything out. The next day, the farewell was quicker than I expected. Well, we're off then. Yeah, see you. Take care, they replied without much thought or emotion. There were no apologies or thanks, no proper send-off. The eldest son and his wife simply lounged in the living room, barely acknowledging our departure. With their indifference, there was no need for us to be overly courteous either. As we silently climbed into the taxi, I couldn't help but worry about the cat we were leaving behind. Would Emily care for it properly? Would she give it the love and attention it needed? Watching our home fade into the distance through the taxi window, I suddenly had a thought. I pulled out my phone and made a call. In hindsight, this might have been my 6th call. My name is Karen. I'm 64 years old, and my husband John is a year older than me. We've been happily married for 35 years with no major conflicts. John worked for a multinational company and was usually very busy, but he always made time for the family. This year, John retired, and I was looking forward to spending more quality time together. However, it seemed I was the only one excited about his retirement. Our eldest son, Robert, and his wife, Emily, had shown dissatisfaction. They had been living with us for about a year, ever since their marriage. Emily had requested to stay with us because of the convenience of our home being close to the station for commuting and shopping. We wanted to give the newlyweds space, but were ultimately persuaded to let them stay. I never imagined it would lead to this. 2 months after John retired, I returned from shopping to hear John's angry voice from the living room. He was scolding Robert, who was slouched on the sofa. It was rare for my usually calm husband to be so furious. What's going on? I asked. John sighed deeply. Robert was rummaging through my bag and took money from my wallet. What? I was stunned. He's been short on cash after losing big at the Kentucky Derby recently. John grabbed a few bills from Robert's hand. It was definitely John's wallet, one I had given him for our 25th wedding anniversary. The presence of the wallet and the money in Robert's hand was undeniable proof. Robert, I thought you quit gambling. You promised never to do it again after that big loss. Why? Robert didn't reply. He continued watching TV, indifferent to the reprimand. He often ignored conversations that didn't interest him or involve criticism, and it seemed he truly wasn't listening. Despite my pleas, he remained unresponsive. I suspected the reason for his return to gambling was Emily. Robert had never been interested in gambling before. He was an honest office worker, never involved in criminal activities like stealing or shoplifting. So what had drastically changed him? I would undoubtedly say that meeting Emily had a significant impact on Robert. Emily was lively and energetic, and when they were introduced, I hoped she would bring out the best in my introverted son. However, I was unaware of her true nature at that time. I hadn't realized she was an avid gambler with a reckless approach to money. Your mother is speaking to you. How about acknowledging her instead of just sitting there? John's frustration was palpable as he turned off the TV. Finally, Robert spoke up. Shut up. I gave it back, so stop whining. Why are you making such a fuss over a couple of bills? I was shocked at his dismissive attitude and the small amount of cash he had taken. Dad, you've really fallen, haven't you? Well, I retired, so that's to be expected, Robert retorted dismissively. Pathetic. With that, he walked out of the living room. I tried to stop him, but John held me back. It's partly my fault for leaving my bag out, John said. Repeatedly scolding him will only make things worse. But his attitude is just too much. It's horrible. John had never flaunted his role as the family's breadwinner, but it was clear that our comfortable lifestyle was largely due to his efforts. This included supporting Robert and Emily, who not only saved on rent but also made excuses for not contributing to living expenses, which John primarily covered. Instead of showing gratitude, they insulted him. I couldn't help but feel anger, not only towards Robert but also towards Emily, who had rekindled his gambling habits. A few days later, the situation still troubled me deeply. I decided it was time to confront Emily. Robert seems to be struggling with money lately. Do you know anything about it? Oh, he lost big at the Kentucky Derby, didn't he? Emily replied casually. You knew about that? I asked, taken aback. Yeah, I invited him to go with me, she admitted. Just as I suspected, Robert had started gambling again because of Emily. Why would you do that? Robert was trying to quit. Was he? I didn't know that, Emily said with a hint of indifference. Please, Emily, don't invite Robert to gamble anymore. If this continues, it will cause problems for you too. We just do what we want with our own earnings, Emily said, shrugging. So it's not a problem. I was taken aback by her unexpected response. It was true that both Robert and Emily earned their own money and had no concerns about basic needs like food, clothing, or shelter, giving them freedom to spend as they please. But still, but you're married. You might have children someday. For your future, you should consider being more responsible with your finances. We've decided not to have kids, Emily responded. We don't want to be tied down or restricted by child-rearing responsibilities. Her response shocked me again. There was so much to process, but in a way, it made sense. Financial needs drastically change with children, and their lax money management reflected that. However, even without children, a couple should support each other. As a couple, you should help each other in tough times. Robert is struggling right now. Why don't you help him out? You're his parents. Besides, you're well off. Oh, but now you're on a pension, right? Emily asked with a hint of mockery. Well, John's company was multinational, so there isn't really a pension, I replied. That's disappointing, Emily said, her tone lacking sympathy. I thought you'd have a substantial pension, I said, surprised. No, there isn't one, Emily replied. So, please handle Robert's issues between yourselves. Honestly, supporting your living expenses is already quite a burden, and we can't afford any more. Well, that's Robert's fault for losing money. You can't blame me for that, she added, shrugging. Anyway, we can't help right now without a clear promise of support for Robert, I said, feeling frustrated as I was practically shown out of their room. A week passed, and Robert's financial troubles remained unresolved. If he was desperate enough to steal from his parents' wallets, wasn't that a sign of real desperation? Shouldn't we help him before he turns to crime? John and I discussed it repeatedly, but he insisted that this was the result of spoiling Robert. Now is the time to be tough for his future, John argued. In the end, I had to agree. At least we were providing meals in the morning and evening, and he had a commuter pass. He just needed to make it to the next payday. But our brief sense of relief was shattered by an unexpected turn of events. It was a weekend night, and after finishing dinner, we were relaxing in the living room when the doorbell rang. Ding dong. It was unusual to have visitors at this hour, so I answered the door with curiosity. To my surprise, Emily stood there, holding a cardboard box in both hands. She struggled to open the door herself. What's this about? What's in the box? I asked, taking the box from her. The rustling sound from inside made me gasp. As I opened the box, I saw a pair of eyes staring back at me. It's a cat, Emily said, looking pleased with herself. Isn't it cute? I found it abandoned on my way home. Despite her enthusiasm, the gravity of the situation hit me. I called out to the living room, John, go to the bedroom, and close the door immediately. I closed the box and handed it back to Emily. Emily, I'm sorry, but we can't keep a cat here. What? Why not? She asked, puzzled. I explained. John has a severe cat allergy. Exposure to cat saliva causes skin inflammation, and inhaling fur or dander triggers asthma-like attacks. Once, when Robert came back from a friend's house covered in cat fur, John had a severe reaction and had to be rushed to the hospital. We discussed this allergy before you moved in. So, you're saying I should just take it back out into the cold? It'll die out there. Emily's response was filled with distress. Her remark left me at a loss for words. I don't dislike cats, so telling her to put the cat back outside was something I couldn't bring myself to do. But I couldn't risk John's health either. All right, the cat can stay in your room for one night, but just one night. Tomorrow, we'll contact the animal shelter to have it taken in. The shelter can provide temporary care for the cat. Emily reluctantly agreed. I informed John and Robert about the arrangement, and we agreed that the cat would stay in their room for the night. However, things didn't go as planned. The next morning, my eldest son and his wife declared, "We've decided to keep the cat." Emily, that's not what we agreed on, I said, feeling frustrated. It's not about whether the cat is cute or not. John is allergic. If he doesn't touch it, it might be fine, but who will take care of it during the day while you're both at work? Can't you take care of it, Karen? Emily asked. I can't, I replied. That's why I'm saying no. Why are you so heartless? Emily shot back. I could only offer a helpless sigh in response. I didn't realize you were so cold, Emily said with a sharp edge in her voice. You can even help a tiny, cute cat. Do you know that shelters often end up euthanizing animals? You're just looking out for yourselves, ignoring any sacrifices needed. People like you are called old nuisances. What? I was taken aback by her harsh words. If we can't keep the cat, you should leave immediately, Emily continued. Before I could respond, Robert chimed in. It might be a good time for you to consider moving to a retirement home. You're old enough, and we have no intention of taking care of you. Besides, you're not earning anymore. That's enough. Both of you, John, who had been silently listening and was now wearing a mask and gloves due to the previous night's incident, suddenly interrupted. He kept his distance from Robert and Emily, and I felt a pang of guilt for making him uncomfortable in his own home. I can't keep a cat because of my allergy, John said. So we'll go along with your suggestion and leave. John, as Robert said, it might be time to consider a retirement home, I agreed, understanding John's intention to avoid further confrontation. To Robert and Emily, it seemed like we had given up. Their attitude shifted to one of triumph. Don't worry about the house, Robert said. We'll take good care of it, but keep all the utilities and ownership in your name. It's too much hassle to change everything. Retirement homes are expensive, Emily added. You'll need to manage that yourself. We're not helping with that. Their relief and joy at our compliance were evident. It felt like this had been Emily's plan all along, using the cat as a scheme to force us out. Over the next week, it became clear that their true nature had been revealed. As I prepared for the move, taking care of John's needs and managing the packing, Robert and Emily continued to make snide remarks. They kept the cat in their room, aware that it would be problematic if John fell ill before we left. Have you finished packing? Please hurry up. We're planning to renovate your room after you leave, Emily urged, her tone brimming with impatience. She seemed ecstatic about finally making the house her own. I glanced at John, who silently signaled me to let it go, and smiled gently at Emily. Sorry for the delay. We'll be out by tomorrow. Since there will be workers around, it's best if you and Robert stay in your room. Given that we were leaving behind the shared furniture and appliances, our belongings were mostly just bedding and a few dressers. It probably would take more than 30 minutes to move everything out. The next day, the final farewell was more straightforward than I had anticipated. Well, we're off then, I said. See you. Take care. There were no words of apology or gratitude. Without even a proper send-off, Robert and Emily simply glanced at us while lounging in the living room. Given their attitude, there was no need for us to be overly courteous. As we silently got into the taxi, I couldn't help but think about the cat they were leaving behind. Would Emily be able to take care of it properly? Would she provide the love and care it needed? As I watched our home fade into the distance through the taxi window, these thoughts weighed heavily on me. I had a sudden thought and pulled out my phone to call someone. In hindsight, it might have been my 6th call since we moved. Adjusting to life after the move had been a bit unsettling, but it was mostly comfortable. With 2 fewer housemates, everything from cooking to laundry took half the effort, and I no longer had to worry about being considerate. I finally felt like I had regained the freedom I lost before Robert and Emily got married. One night, about a week after settling in, Emily called me, and with John's approval, I answered. Emily's panicked voice blared through the receiver. Karen, what's going on? The power and gas in the house seem to be off, she exclaimed. It sounded like she had just returned home, and her distress was so great that she inadvertently switched to a video call. All I could see was the beam of a flashlight moving around in a dark room, and I couldn't make out Emily's expression. Well, I canceled the services, so it's no wonder they're off, I replied. What? What do you mean you canceled? Is this some kind of prank? Are you getting back at us for kicking you out? Emily's voice was laced with confusion and anger. Emily, calm down. Is Robert there with you? John asked gently. Emily's tone softened a bit as she replied. He just got home. Robert, seeing the dark house, was also in a mild panic. But after they calmed down, John explained the situation. The house has been sold. The buyer has been found, and the handover date is approaching, so we canceled all the utilities. We were told about this. Emily interjected, her indignation clear. How could you make such arrangements without informing us? I felt exasperated. I informed Robert about everything, the sale, the handover date, and the progress along the way. Clearly, Robert hadn't communicated any of this to you, or perhaps he didn't even remember hearing it. Given all the meetings with real estate agents and potential buyers over the past few months, the house had been quite busy. Robert and Emily were rarely home during the day, so they must have missed all the notifications. They had plenty of chances to notice, but they missed them all. I assumed you would move out right after us. Hadn't you started packing? I asked. I asked innocently, and immediately Robert and Emily began arguing. It's your fault. I didn't know. I was deceived. Watching them bicker in the dark, illuminated only by a flashlight, was oddly amusing. But once their arguments subsided, they directed their anger back at us. Even so, moving forward without your housemate's consent is too much, Emily said, her frustration evident. I don't remember agreeing to this. Oh, but I did get a response from you, I replied. I asked if it was okay to sell the house, and you said yeah, sure. Robert's response had been half-hearted, delivered while he was engrossed in watching TV, but it was still an answer. It's his fault for not paying attention, I added. Robert, momentarily speechless, then shouted defiantly, Fine. What should we do now? What do you mean, what should we do? Where are we supposed to live now? You must have arranged something for us, right? Robert demanded. John replied in a puzzled tone, Why would we arrange a place for you? We've already sold the house. You were planning to move out anyway, so we're not to blame. And since you decided to sell the house, you should consider the impact on us. Well, rental properties usually pay relocation fees, Robert argued, so give us some money. You made a lot from the sale, didn't you? A rental house, I retorted. In that case, before paying any relocation fees, you should cover the rent for the time you stayed in the house and the living expenses we've covered for you. Adding it all up, it comes to about $10,000. Can you pay that now? Robert and Emily fell silent. Given Robert's financial troubles, they likely couldn't afford it. Realizing they were at a disadvantage, Robert tried to appease us. Right, we should pay you first, but we're a bit short right now. How about we live together again? Yes, please tell us where you moved. We'll join you there. They hadn't cared about our new place when we left. I dismissed their plea. That's impossible. We can't live with a cat. Wasn't that the reason you kicked us out? We'll get rid of the cat. Just let us stay, Emily pleaded. Their selfishness was evident. It was clear to me that the cat was merely a tool to drive us out. Their words about ignoring sacrifices for comfort were turned back on them. Do you know what? You're right. You called us old nuisances, but it's you who are willing to sacrifice anything for your convenience. Emily was left speechless, tears streaming down her face. John and I no longer felt any obligation to be swayed by her tears. We've moved into a senior living community, as you suggested. It's very comfortable, and we're happy here. We can't have you join us. Don't worry about us. We'll be fine, I said, ending the call. All we heard were their sobs. They never apologized, and soon, Robert and Emily left the house. Without savings, they both declared bankruptcy and now live in public housing. We learned this from Sarah, our friendly neighbor, when we returned to clean the house. According to Sarah, Robert and Emily struggled to pack their belongings in a house without electricity and left the cat behind. Thankfully, Sarah agreed to keep an eye on the cat and ended up adopting it herself. Surprisingly, Robert and Emily did a divorce. Perhaps they're well matched. They might be hoping for John's inheritance, but since we've chosen a high-cost senior community, there won't be much left. John and I have finally achieved a truly peaceful life together. The community offers many amenities, including a gym, karaoke, and hot springs. We enjoy 3 freshly prepared meals a day and have the freedom to go out or travel as we please. Best of all, we've made many new friends here. We plan to savor this new phase of our lives, cherishing our time and new friendships.
The bitter chill of the Minnesota winter night bit into my skin as I stood shivering on the porch, my arms wrapped tightly around my pregnant belly. Maybe a night in the cold will cool down your high spirits, Elsie? Dalton's harsh words echoed in my ears as the door slammed shut, the lock clicking into place. I banged my fists against the unforgiving wood, shouting for him to let me back inside, but there was no response. Hot tears streamed down my cheeks, freezing on my face in the icy air. How could he do this to me? To us. I thought, my hand instinctively cradling my swollen stomach. Minutes ticked by like hours, and my teeth began to chatter uncontrollably. Just as I feared I might collapse from the cold, a familiar voice called out from the driveway. "Elsie? What on earth are you doing out here?" Relief washed over me as I recognized my brother-in-law, Rudy. "Dalton. He locked me out." I managed to stammer through chattering teeth. Rudy's face contorted in anger as he rushed towards the door, pounding his fist against it. "Dalton! Open up, you son of a bitch!" After what felt like an eternity, the door finally swung open and Dalton appeared, his expression a mixture of surprise and annoyance. "What's all the racket?" "Are you out of your mind?" Rudy shouted, pushing past him and ushering me inside. "Leaving your pregnant wife out in the cold like that? What were you thinking?" Dalton scoffed, his arms folded across his chest. "She needed to cool off. She was getting hysterical." My hands trembled as I peeled off my frozen coat, the warmth of the house stinging my skin. "I wasn't being hysterical, Dalton. I was just trying to talk to you about our finances, and you completely shut me down like you always do." Rudy stepped between us, his protective instincts kicking in. "That's no excuse, man. You can't treat her like that, especially in her condition." Dalton's eyes narrowed, and he jabbed a finger in Rudy's direction. "Stay out of this, Rudy. It's between me and my wife." As the two brothers argued, I couldn't help but feel a lingering chill, not from the cold but from the realization that my husband's actions had crossed a line. In that moment, the seeds of doubt were planted, and I knew that things would never be the same between us again. Rudy's eyes burned with rage as he glared at Dalton. "Don't give me that crap, bro. You know what you did was wrong." Dalton sneered, his hands balling into fists at his sides. "I don't need a lecture from you, Rudy. Elsie's my wife, and I'll deal with her how I see fit." "Deal with me?" I couldn't believe the words coming out of his mouth. "I'm not some kind of problem for you to deal with, Dalton. I'm your wife, the mother of your child." Dalton whirled around, his face twisted in anger. "Don't you dare try to play the victim card with me, Elsie. You knew what you were getting into when you married me." "Enough," Rudy shouted, stepping between us. "This has gone too far, Dalton. Locking Elsie out in the freezing cold? What the hell were you thinking?" Dalton's jaw clenched, and for a moment I thought he might take a swing at his own brother. I was thinking that my hormonal wife needed to cool off before she said something she'd regret. "The only one who's going to regret something is you, bro," Rudy warned, his voice low and dangerous. "If you ever pull a stunt like this again, I swear to God I'll make you pay." Dalton let out a harsh laugh, shaking his head. "Is that a threat, Rudy? Because I'm not afraid of you or anyone else in this family." "It's a promise," Rudy replied, his eyes narrowed. "You've crossed a line, Dalton, and there are going to be consequences." As the two brothers squared off, the tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. I could feel the anger and resentment radiating off of them in waves, and I knew that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. Later that night, as I lay in bed beside Dalton's sleeping form, I couldn't help but wonder where this all would lead. Rudy's words echoed in my mind. There are going to be consequences. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, Dalton would finally face the consequences of his actions. In the days following Rudy's confrontation with Dalton, a palpable tension hung over our house like a dark cloud. Dalton became increasingly distant and withdrawn, spending more and more time away from home. I couldn't help but wonder where he was going and what he was doing. But every time I tried to broach the subject, he brushed me off with a dismissive wave of his hand. It was during one of Dalton's extended absences that I stumbled upon something that would change everything. I was cleaning out his home office, trying to bring some sense of order to the chaos, when I noticed a stack of unopened envelopes stuffed in the back of his desk drawer. Curiosity got the better of me, and I slid them out, my heart sinking as I read the return addresses. Various casinos and online gambling sites. As I tore open the envelopes one by one, the true extent of Dalton's betrayal became clear. He had racked up thousands of dollars in gambling debts, mortgaging our future and our child's future in the process. I felt sick to my stomach, the walls closing in around me as I realized the depth of his deception. When Dalton finally returned home later that night, I was waiting for him, the stack of envelopes clutched in my trembling hands. "What is all this?" I demanded, thrusting the papers in his face. He blanched, his eyes darting nervously around the room. "It's nothing, Elsie, just some bills, that's all." "Don't lie to me, Dalton," I shouted, my voice cracking with emotion. "These are from casinos and gambling sites. How could you do this to us, to our family?" Dalton's expression hardened, and he snatched the envelopes from my grasp. "You had no right going through my things," he growled. "This is none of your business." "None of my business?" I echoed incredulously. "We're supposed to be partners, Dalton, a team. But instead, you've been keeping secrets and racking up debts behind my back." He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "Like you're one to talk about keeping secrets, Elsie. You think I don't know about your little flirtation with Rudy?" My heart stopped in my chest, and I felt the blood drain from my face. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb with me," he spat. "I've seen the way you two look at each other, the lingering touches, the inside jokes. It makes me sick." I opened my mouth to protest, but he held up a hand, silencing me. "Save it, Elsie. We're both guilty of betrayal here. The only difference is, I'm not ashamed of mine." With that, he turned on his heel and stormed out of the room, leaving me standing there in stunned silence. As the weight of his words sank in, I felt a fire ignite within me, a burning desire for revenge, for justice. Dalton had made his choices, and now it was time for him to face the consequences. The next morning, I wasted no time in calling Rudy and asking him to come over. If anyone could help me sort through this mess and figure out a plan of action, it was him. When he arrived, the look of concern on his face was evident. "What's going on, Elsie? You sounded pretty shaken up on the phone." I took a deep breath, bracing myself for the inevitable fallout. I found evidence of Dalton's gambling debts. "And that's not all. He's accusing me of having an affair with you." Rudy's eyes widened in shock, and then narrowed in anger. "That son of a bitch, how dare he try to turn this around on you?" "I know," I said, my voice trembling. "But that's not even the worst part. He's not ashamed of what he's done, Rudy. He doesn't care that he's put our family's future at risk." Rudy shook his head in disbelief, running a hand through his hair. "Unbelievable. So what are we going to do about this?" A steely resolve settled over me, and I met his gaze with determination. "We're going to make him pay. I want him to face the consequences of his actions once and for all." Rudy nodded, a grim expression on his face. "Whatever you need, Elsie, I'm here for you. Just say the word." Over the next few hours, we pored over the evidence I had gathered, formulating a plan. We would start by contacting a lawyer and exploring our legal options. Dalton's gambling debts and potential financial fraud could be grounds for divorce and a favorable settlement. But that wasn't enough for me. I wanted Dalton to face the full weight of his betrayal, both legally and socially. With Rudy's help, I would gather the evidence of his emotional affairs and present it to our family and friends, ensuring that he was ostracized and held accountable for his actions. As the plan took shape, I could feel a sense of empowerment growing within me. For too long I had been the victim in this twisted narrative, but no more. It was time for Dalton to face the consequences of his choices, and I would stop at nothing to make sure justice was served. Rudy must have sensed the determination in my eyes, because he reached across the table and gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. "We've got this, Elsie. Dalton won't know what hit him." I nodded, squeezing his hand back. "Thank you, Rudy, for everything. I don't know what I'd do without you in my corner." As he flashed me a warm smile, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope for the future. A future where Dalton's toxic influence was nothing but a distant memory, and I could finally begin to rebuild my life on my own terms. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Rudy and I spent every spare moment gathering evidence and building our case against Dalton. I had never felt so focused, so driven in my life. Finally, the day came when Dalton returned from one of his mysterious trips. As soon as he walked through the door, I knew it was time to strike. "Welcome home, honey," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Have a nice trip." He froze in the entryway, his eyes narrowing suspiciously. "What's going on, Elsie?" "Oh, nothing much," I replied, feigning nonchalance. "Just gathering a little evidence." With a dramatic flourish, I produced a stack of papers and photos, laying them out on the table in front of him. "Care to explain these?" Dalton's face paled as he took in the incriminating documents, bank statements, casino receipts, even grainy photos of him in compromising positions with other women. "Where did you get these?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. "Does it really matter?" I shot back. "You've been lying to me for months, Dalton, racking up debts, cheating on me, all while I've been carrying our child." His eyes narrowed to slits, and he jabbed a finger in my direction. "You had no right to go snooping through my things. This is a violation of my privacy." I let out a bitter laugh. "Privacy? You've got to be kidding me. After everything you've done, you have the nerve to talk about privacy?" Rudy, who had been standing silently in the corner, stepped forward. "Face it, Dalton, the jig is up. Elsie knows everything, and she's not going to let you get away with it anymore." Dalton whirled on his brother, his face contorted with rage. "Stay out of this, Rudy. This has nothing to do with you." "It has everything to do with me," Rudy retorted, his voice steady and unwavering. "Elsie is my family, and I'm not going to stand by and watch you treat her like garbage anymore." For a moment, it looked like Dalton might lunge at him, but then his shoulders slumped in defeat. He sank into a nearby chair, burying his face in his hands. "What do you want from me, Elsie?" he mumbled, his voice muffled. I straightened my spine, gathering every ounce of strength and determination I had. "I want you to take responsibility for your actions. I want a divorce, and I want you to pay back every single cent you've squandered on your gambling and your mistresses." Dalton's head snapped up, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm deadly serious," I replied, my voice steady and unwavering. "You've had your chance, Dalton, and you blew it. Now it's time for you to face the consequences." As I looked into his eyes, I could see the realization dawning, the understanding that his world was crumbling around him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. For the first time in our marriage, I held all the power, and I wasn't about to let him off the hook. The days and weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and emotional turmoil. True to his nature, Dalton didn't go down without a fight, hiring a high-powered attorney and attempting to discredit me at every turn. "Your Honor, my client's estranged wife is clearly a scorned woman with an axe to grind," Dalton's lawyer drawled during one particularly heated court session. "Her so-called evidence is nothing more than a desperate attempt to paint my client in a negative light." I felt my blood boil as the smarmy lawyer tried to twist the narrative, but Rudy's reassuring presence beside me helped me keep my composure. "That's a load of crap, and you know it," he muttered under his breath. "Stay strong, Elsie. We've got the truth on our side." As the proceedings dragged on, it became clear that Dalton's gambling debts and financial misdeeds were too much for even his high-priced legal team to overcome. The evidence was overwhelming, and the judge seemed increasingly unimpressed with his attempts to wriggle out of responsibility. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the judge delivered his ruling. "Mr. Thompson, the court has reviewed the evidence presented, and it is clear that you have engaged in a pattern of reckless and irresponsible behavior," he said, his voice stern and unyielding. "Your actions have put your family's financial security at grave risk, and your attempts to deflect blame or minimize your wrongdoing are both unacceptable and transparent." Dalton's face was a mask of fury as the judge continued. "In light of these findings, the court is awarding Mrs. Thompson full custody of your unborn child, as well as a substantial portion of your joint assets to ensure her financial stability moving forward. Furthermore, you will be required to pay back the full amount of your gambling debts and any associated legal fees incurred by your estranged wife." As the judge's gavel fell, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It was finally over. Dalton had been held accountable for his actions, and I was free to start building a new life for myself and my child. But even as the courtroom cleared, Dalton refused to go quietly. He cornered me in the hallway, his eyes blazing with hatred. "You think you've won, don't you?" he hissed, his face inches from mine. "You think you've gotten your precious revenge, but mark my words, Elsie, this isn't over, not by a long shot." Before I could respond, Rudy was there, stepping between us and pushing Dalton back. "That's enough out of you," he growled. "You lost, Dalton. It's time to accept that and move on." Dalton glared at his brother, his fists clenched at his sides. For a moment, I thought he might try to take a swing, but then his shoulders slumped in defeat. "This isn't over," he repeated, his voice low and dangerous. "You'll see." As he turned and stormed away, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of unease. But Rudy's reassuring hand on my shoulder helped ground me in the moment. "Don't listen to him, Elsie," he said softly. "It's over. You've got your life back, and he's the one who's going to have to face the consequences of his actions for once." As I looked into Rudy's warm, supportive eyes, I knew he was right. The battle might have been won, but the war was far from over, and I was determined to come out on top, no matter what Dalton threw my way. With Dalton's toxic presence finally gone from my life, it was like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in years, I could breathe freely, without the constant fear and anxiety that had plagued me during our marriage. Rudy was there for me every step of the way, helping me sort through the tangled mess of my life and start rebuilding from the ground up. Whether it was lending a hand with practical matters like finding a new place to live or simply providing a listening ear when I needed to vent, his unwavering support was a lifeline that kept me grounded. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Rudy," I told him one evening as we sat on the porch of my new apartment, sipping lemonade and watching the sunset. He flashed me that warm, reassuring smile that had become so familiar. "You'd be just fine, Elsie. You're one of the strongest people I know." I couldn't help but shake my head in disagreement. "I don't know about that. If it wasn't for you standing by my side through all of this, I might have crumbled under the weight of it all." Reaching across the small table between us, Rudy gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "That's what family is for, right? Through thick and thin, we've got each other's backs." As our eyes met, I felt a flutter in my chest that had nothing to do with the impending arrival of my baby. There was a connection between us, a bond that went deeper than just familial ties, and in that moment, I realized that my feelings for Rudy were starting to evolve into something more. Over the next few weeks, as I settled into my new home and prepared for the birth of my child, Rudy was a constant presence in my life. He helped me set up the nursery, paint the walls, and assemble the crib, all while keeping my spirits high with his infectious humor and unwavering positivity. "You know, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm actually excited to be a dad," he joked one day as we put the finishing touches on the nursery. I raised an eyebrow at him, unable to suppress a smile. "Oh, really? And when did you and your wife decide to have a baby?" Rudy laughed, shaking his head. "You know what I mean, smartass. I'm just saying, being there for you, and this little one has really made me think about starting a family of my own someday." As he spoke, his gaze lingered on me, his eyes filled with a tenderness that made my heart skip a beat. In that moment, I knew that my feelings for him were more than just a fleeting crush. They were the beginnings of something real, something deep and unbreakable. And as I looked around at the peaceful sanctuary we had created together, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hope for the future. A future where Dalton was nothing but a distant memory, and the love and support of my newfound family was all that mattered. The first snowflakes of the season were just starting to drift lazily past the window when the contractions began. I gripped the arm of the rocking chair, letting out a sharp gasp of pain as the tightening sensation swept through my abdomen. "Rudy," I called out, my voice strained. "It's time!" Within seconds, he was at my side, his eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and panic. "Are you sure? Should we call your doctor?" I managed a tight nod, gritting my teeth against another wave of pain. "Yes, call them. And my mom, too. This baby isn't waiting for anyone." As Rudy sprung into action, making the necessary phone calls and gathering our hospital bags, I focused on my breathing, trying to ride out the contractions. It was finally happening. After months of preparation and anticipation, I was about to bring new life into this world. The next few hours were a blur of frantic activity, punctuated by moments of intense agony as the contractions grew stronger and more frequent. Through it all, Rudy was my rock, coaching me through the pain and offering words of encouragement whenever I felt like giving up. "You've got this, Elsie," he murmured, wiping the sweat from my brow with a cool cloth. "Just breathe, okay? You're doing amazing." When the moment finally arrived and our daughter's tiny cries filled the delivery room, it was like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. As I cradled her perfect squirming form against my chest, tears of joy streamed down my face. "She's beautiful," Rudy whispered, his voice thick with emotion as he reached out to stroke her downy head. In that moment, all the pain and turmoil of the past year seemed to melt away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of love and hope. This tiny, precious life was a symbol of my strength, my resilience, a reminder that no matter how dark things may seem, there is always the promise of rebirth and renewal. As our families began to trickle into the room, cooing over the newest edition and offering their congratulations, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sadness that Dalton wasn't there to share in this momentous occasion. But then I remembered the hell he had put me through, the betrayal and lies that had nearly torn my world apart, and that feeling quickly dissipated. This was my victory. My triumph over the darkness that had threatened to consume me. And as I looked around at the smiling, supportive faces of my loved ones, my mother, my siblings, and of course Rudy, I knew that I had everything I needed right here. "Thank you," I whispered, catching Rudy's eye, "for being here, for everything." He smiled warmly, reaching out to give my hand a gentle squeeze. "There's nowhere else I'd rather be." In that moment, as the snow fell softly outside and our little family celebrated the arrival of new life, I knew that the future was wide open, full of possibilities and promise. The frost of my past with Dalton had finally melted away, and a new chapter was just beginning. The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton shimmered with the affluent elite, gathered for a high-profile fundraiser. Margot Jennings, a renowned crime journalist, navigated the throngs, champagne flute in hand, her watchful eyes ever vigilant for a potential story. As she approached a secluded alcove, hushed voices caught her attention. Two well-dressed men huddled together, their body language betraying the gravity of their conversation. "Can't believe Alistair pulled it off again," one man muttered, shaking his head. "Walked that scumbag Ryder right out of the courtroom without a scratch." Margot's heart skipped a beat at the mention of her husband's name. The other man scoffed. "Crane knows how to work the system. Those fat envelopes he slides under the table do wonders." Margot's grip tightened around her glass, the implications sinking in like a lead weight. Alistair, her brilliant defense attorney husband, was being accused of bribery, tampering with the very justice system he had sworn to uphold. She slipped away, her mind reeling. Could the man she loved, the one she had admired for his unwavering ethics, truly be capable of such deceit? Later that night, as Alistair's key turned in the lock, Margot steeled herself, determined to confront him. But one look at his tired smile and her resolve faltered. She couldn't bring herself to voice her suspicions. Not yet. Over the following weeks, Margot's doubts festered like an open wound. Alistair's irregular hours and evasive demeanor only fueled her mistrust. The man she thought she knew had become a stranger, and she found herself torn between her love for him and her journalistic integrity. Margot knew she couldn't ignore the nagging voice within, the one that demanded she uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. She had to investigate, to follow the trail wherever it led, even if it meant shattering the life she had so carefully built. With a heavy heart, Margot made a decision that would forever alter the course of her life. She would expose the truth, no matter the cost. In the weeks that followed, the distance between Alistair and me grew palpable. His late nights at the office became more frequent, often stretching into the early hours of the morning. When he did return home, his mind seemed preoccupied, his responses curt and dismissive. One evening, as I waited up for him, the grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 2:00. The front door creaked open, and Alistair stumbled in, his usually impeccable appearance disheveled. "You're back late again," I remarked, unable to mask the accusation in my tone. He shot me a guarded look. "High-profile case. You know how it is." I scrutinized his face, searching for any hint of deception. "Another one of those wealthy clients you can't discuss?" Alistair's jaw tightened. "Margot, please, let's not do this tonight." "Do what?" I pressed. "Ask about your work? The work that's keeping you away from home more and more?" He pinched the bridge of his nose, exhaling sharply. "It's complicated. You wouldn't understand." His dismissive words stung, fanning the flames of my suspicion. If there was nothing to hide, why the secrecy? In the following days, I found myself scrutinizing every aspect of Alistair's behavior, hunting for clues. The way his cell phone stayed glued to his side, the furtive glances he exchanged when taking calls, the hushed tones he adopted, it all screamed deceit. My journalistic instincts kicked into high gear. I started digging, discreetly combing through his files and financial records. What I uncovered left me reeling. Unexplained cash deposits, offshore bank accounts, and a trail of suspicious transactions linked to his high-profile cases. The evidence was mounting, and the weight of it crushed my heart. The man I had once admired, the brilliant lawyer whose passion for justice had drawn me to him, was nothing more than a fraud. Alistair's suave demeanor and silver tongue had blinded me to the truth. He wasn't just bending the rules. He was breaking them, manipulating outcomes for the highest bidder. And all this time I had been living a lie, a silent accomplice to his crimes. As the realization sank in, a newfound determination took root within me. I would expose Alistair's misdeeds, no matter the consequences. If he couldn't uphold the law, I would make sure it caught up to him. With the weight of Alistair's betrayal bearing down on me, I knew I needed help navigating the treacherous waters ahead. That's when I reached out to an old friend from college, Theo Carter, now a seasoned private investigator. We met at a dimly lit cafe, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafting through the air. As soon as Theo sat down, I slid the damning evidence across the table, the financial records, the offshore accounts, everything I had uncovered about Alistair's misdeeds. Theo's brow furrowed as he flipped through the pages, his expression growing increasingly grim. "Margot, this is some heavy stuff. Are you sure about this?" I steeled my resolve, meeting his gaze. "I need to know the truth, Theo. All of it." He let out a low whistle. "All right, let's dig deeper then. But be prepared for what we might find." Over the next few weeks, Theo and I worked tirelessly, following every lead, scrutinizing every detail. The more we uncovered, the clearer Alistair's web of deceit became. Bribery, extortion, fabricated evidence, he had stooped to unimaginable depths, all in pursuit of wealth and power. The man I thought I knew was nothing more than a chameleon, changing colors to suit his needs. "We've got enough to bury him," Theo declared one evening as we pored over the mounting evidence. "The question is, what do you want to do with it?" I didn't hesitate. "Take him down. He needs to face the consequences of his actions." Theo nodded grimly. "It won't be easy, Margot. He's got connections, influence. Are you ready for the fallout?" I thought about the years of deception, the lies that had eroded the foundation of our marriage. "I'm ready," I said, my voice unwavering. He made his choices. Now it's time to face the consequences. With the evidence in hand, we formulated a plan. Theo would discreetly pass the information to a prosecutor he knew, someone with the tenacity to take on a high-profile case like this. Meanwhile, I would bide my time, playing the role of the oblivious wife until the trap was set. As I looked back on the man I had once loved, I felt a strange sense of detachment. The Alistair I knew was gone, replaced by a twisted version of himself, consumed by greed and hubris. And I would be the one to bring him crashing down, no matter the personal cost. The air was thick with tension as I strode into our penthouse apartment, the weight of the evidence heavy in my briefcase. It was time to confront Alistair, to lay bare the ugly truth I had uncovered. He was seated in the living room, a tumbler of scotch in hand, his brow furrowed as he studied a legal document. When he noticed me, he flashed that charming smile that had once made my heart flutter. "Margot, you're back early. Everything all right?" I steeled myself, setting the briefcase down with a thud. "We need to talk, Alistair." His expression faltered, sensing the gravity in my tone. "What's going on?" Without a word, I opened the briefcase and slid the stack of files across the coffee table. Financial records, wiretap transcripts, witness statements, a damning portrait of his misdeeds laid bare. Alistair's eyes widened as he flipped through the pages, his face paling. "Where did you get these?" "So it's true, then?" I challenged. "You've been manipulating cases, taking bribes, all while claiming to uphold the law?" His mouth opened and closed, a flicker of panic crossing his features before he regained his composure. "Margot, you don't understand the bigger picture here. The system is rigged, corrupt to the core. I'm just playing the game." "The game?" I spat out a bitter laugh. "Is that what you call selling your soul? Betraying everything you claim to stand for?" Alistair slammed his fist on the table, his calm facade cracking. "You think I had a choice? In this world, it's either eat or be eaten. I did what I had to do to survive, to provide for us. Don't you dare try to justify this with some twisted logic, I shouted, my anger boiling over. You've been lying to me for years, Alistair. Every single day, you looked me in the eye and lied. His jaw clenched, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of the ruthless man he had become. And what were you expecting, Margot? A confession? A tearful apology? He scoffed. I'm not sorry, not for a damn thing. In that moment, the man I had once loved was a stranger to me. The charming facade had shattered, revealing the cold, calculating core beneath. You're going to pay for this, I warned, my voice low. I'll make sure of it. Alistair's lips curved into a cruel smirk. And risk destroying yourself in the process? We're still married, in case you've forgotten. Any move against me will just drag you down, too. His words hung in the air, a thinly veiled threat, but I refused to back down, to let him wield his power over me any longer. Then so be it, I said, holding his gaze. I'm done being an accomplice to your crimes. It's over, Alistair. All of it. As I turned to walk away, his voice followed me, laced with a chilling promise. This isn't over, Margot. Not by a long shot. In the aftermath of my explosive confrontation with Alistair, I found myself at a crossroads. Part of me wanted to walk away, to leave the mess behind and start anew, but a stronger force burned within, the unwavering need to see justice served, no matter the cost. That's when I reached out to Corrine Hayes, a tenacious prosecutor I had crossed paths with during my investigative work. We met at a nondescript diner, the kind of place where anonymity was all but guaranteed. Corrine's eyes narrowed as she flipped through the incriminating evidence I had compiled. This is some heavy stuff, Margot. You know what you're getting yourself into, right? I nodded, my jaw set with determination. He needs to be stopped, Corrine, before he corrupts the system any further. She let out a low whistle. All right then, but we need to play this smart. Airtight case, rock-solid evidence. No room for mistakes. Over the following weeks, Corrine and I worked in secret, meticulously building a case against Alistair. Every piece of evidence was scrutinized, every witness statement corroborated. We left no stone unturned, no angle unexplored. Throughout it all, I walked a tightrope, maintaining the facade of a dutiful wife in Alistair's presence. Each morning I would plaster on a smile and wish him well, all while plotting his downfall behind the scenes. The strain was immense, the emotional toll weighing heavily on me, but I refused to falter, driven by an unwavering belief that justice would prevail. As the final pieces fell into place, Corrine called me into her office, her expression grave. We've got him, she said, sliding a thick file across the desk. The evidence is solid, the witnesses prepped. All that's left is to pull the trigger. I exhaled slowly, steeling myself for the inevitable fallout. Do it. It's time to end this. Corrine nodded, a glimmer of admiration in her eyes. You're one tough cookie, Margot. Not many would have the guts to take down their own husband like this. My throat tightened as the weight of my actions hit me. He left me no choice. This is the only way to stop the cycle of corruption. With a heavy heart, I watched as Corrine set the wheels in motion, issuing the arrest warrant that would ultimately bring Alistair's world crashing down. As I left her office, a strange sense of finality washed over me. The die had been cast, the point of no return crossed. There was no turning back now, only the looming storm on the horizon, a storm I had unleashed with my own hands. The days leading up to Alistair's trial were a whirlwind of activity. The media had caught wind of the high-profile case, and suddenly, our once private lives were splashed across every newspaper and news channel in the city. As the star witness, I found myself thrust into the spotlight, fielding endless questions from reporters hungry for the juiciest details. Through it all, I maintained a stoic facade, refusing to let my personal turmoil show. The courthouse was a madhouse on the day of the trial's opening statements. Photographers and journalists swarmed the steps, their cameras flashing like 1,000 tiny suns. I steeled myself and marched through the chaos, my head held high. Inside the courtroom, the tension was palpable. Alistair sat at the defense table, his expression a mask of cool indifference. But I could see the cracks in his armor, the flicker of fear in his eyes as he realized the noose was tightening. As the trial progressed, the evidence against him mounted, each witness testimony driving another nail into his coffin. Corinne was relentless, her cross-examinations, surgical strikes that left Alistair's defense in tatters. Then came my turn on the stand. As I raised my hand and swore to tell the truth, our eyes met across the courtroom. In that moment, I saw a kaleidoscope of emotions flash across Alistair's face: anger, betrayal, and a hint of something else. Regret, perhaps? But any remnants of the man I had once loved were quickly extinguished as the questioning began. With each damning revelation, each piece of evidence I presented, his mask crumbled a little more. Finally, Alistair snapped. "How could you do this to me?" he roared, slamming his fist on the table. "After everything we've been through, you're the one driving the knife into my back?" The courtroom fell silent, all eyes fixed on the explosive confrontation unfolding before them. "I did what I had to do," I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil churning within me. "You left me no choice, Alistair. Your actions have consequences, and it's time you faced them." His jaw clenched, and for a moment I thought he might lunge across the courtroom at me. But then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the fire in his eyes extinguished, replaced by a cold, hollow stare. "You'll pay for this," he hissed, his words dripping with venom. "One way or another, you'll pay." From that moment on, the trial took on a life of its own, careening towards its inevitable conclusion. Each day I would take the stand, reliving the painful details of Alistair's betrayal, my heart growing heavier with every revelation. But through it all, I remained resolute, driven by an unwavering belief that justice would prevail, no matter the personal cost. The courtroom was deathly silent as the jury foreman rose to deliver the verdict. Tension hung thick in the air, every breath held in anticipation of the words that would seal Alistair's fate. "On the count of bribery, we find the defendant." The foreman paused, his gaze sweeping across the room. "Guilty." A collective gasp rippled through the gallery, but I remained still, my hands clenched tightly in my lap. One by one, the foreman read out the charges: obstruction of justice, tampering with evidence, abuse of power, each one punctuated by that damning word: guilty. Alistair's face remained impassive, but I could see the muscle twitching in his jaw, the only outward sign of the storm raging within him. As the final guilty verdict was announced, a smattering of applause broke out, quickly silenced by the judge's gavel. But the sound rang hollow in my ears, the gravity of the moment weighing heavily upon me. In that instant, everything I had fought for, every sacrifice I had made, had come to fruition. Justice had been served, the corrupt brought to their knees. And yet the victory felt hollow, tainted by the bitter taste of betrayal. Alistair's sentencing was swift and severe, a testament to the depth of his crimes. As the judge rattled off the terms, 10 years in a maximum security prison, disbarment, and a hefty fine, I watched the man I had once loved crumble before my eyes. The once cocky defense attorney, so sure of his invincibility, was reduced to a mere shell of himself. The power and influence he had wielded like a weapon now stripped away, leaving him exposed and vulnerable. As the bailiffs led him away in shackles, our eyes met one final time. In that fleeting moment, I saw a flicker of something I had never expected to see from Alistair. Regret. It was a hollow victory, one that left me adrift in a sea of conflicting emotions. The thirst for justice had been quenched, but at what cost? My marriage, my sense of self, had all been sacrificed on the altar of truth. In the days that followed, the dust began to settle, and the city moved on to the next sensational story. But for me, the scars ran deeper than any headline could convey. The accolades poured in, praising my unwavering pursuit of the truth and my role in exposing corruption at the highest levels. But the words rang hollow, a pale consolation for the personal turmoil I had endured. As I stood in the rubble of my once idyllic life, I couldn't help but wonder, was it all worth it? Had I done the right thing, or had I simply perpetuated the cycle of violence and retribution that had consumed us both? The answers eluded me, leaving me adrift in a sea of uncertainty, grappling with the harsh reality that sometimes, even when justice prevails, there are no true winners, only survivors. The aftermath of Alistair's trial was a whirlwind of emotions I had never anticipated. As the dust settled and the media circus moved on to the next big story, I found myself adrift, struggling to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. The accolades poured in, praising my unwavering pursuit of justice, and my role in exposing the corruption that had festered at the heart of the legal system. But the words rang hollow, a pale consolation for the personal turmoil I had endured. In the quiet moments, when the noise of the world fell away, I was left to grapple with the harsh reality of what I had sacrificed: my marriage, my trust, and a part of myself that could never be reclaimed. Alistair's sentencing had brought a sense of finality, but it was a hollow victory, tainted by the bitter taste of betrayal. As I stood in the rubble of my once idyllic life, I couldn't help but wonder, was it all worth it? Had I done the right thing, or had I simply perpetuated the cycle of violence and retribution that had consumed us both? It was in those dark moments that I found solace in the one thing that had always grounded me: my writing. I poured my heart and soul into crafting a memoir, a searing account of my journey through the depths of deception and the ultimate pursuit of truth. With each word, I exorcised the demons that had haunted me, laying bare the raw emotions and inner turmoil that had driven me to confront the unthinkable. It was a cathartic process, a way to make sense of the chaos and find purpose in the aftermath. As the book took shape, I found myself sharing it with those who had stood by me through the storm: Theo, Corinne, and others who had witnessed the unraveling of my life. Their reactions were a mix of awe and empathy, a testament to the power of my story to resonate beyond the confines of my personal experience. "You know, this could be bigger than just a memoir," Theo remarked one evening over drinks. "This could be a rallying cry, a wake-up call for everyone who's ever been disillusioned by the justice system." His words struck a chord within me, igniting a flame that had been smoldering beneath the ashes of my despair. What if my story could be a catalyst for change, a beacon of hope for those who had lost faith in the very institutions meant to protect them? With renewed vigor, I dove back into the manuscript, crafting not just a personal account, but a broader exploration of the systemic issues that had enabled Alistair's corruption to fester unchecked. It was a bold move, one that risked ruffling feathers and reopening old wounds. But as I put the finishing touches on the book, I knew I had created something larger than myself, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the unwavering pursuit of justice, no matter the personal cost. As the book hit the shelves and the reviews poured in, I found myself embarking on a new chapter, one fueled by a sense of purpose and a determination to use my voice as a force for positive change. For in the ashes of my former life, I had risen like a phoenix, reborn with a newfound strength and a clarity of purpose that would guide me towards a future where truth and integrity reigned supreme. I took a deep breath and steadied myself as I entered the conference room. Elliot was already there, pacing back and forth, deep in conversation on his phone. "Listen, I need that money transferred by tomorrow. No excuses," he snapped. "My wife thinks it's for our latest development project. She has no idea." My heart sank. I had my suspicions about Elliot's shifty behavior lately, but hearing him outright admit to deceiving me was a gut punch I wasn't prepared for. Elliot ended the call and whirled around, his face flushing when he saw me. "Tessa, how long have you been standing there?" "Long enough," I replied, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. "What's going on, Elliot? What are you up to?" He shook his head and forced a chuckle. "It's nothing, babe. Just some last-minute details for the Oakwood project. You know how it is." I narrowed my eyes. "Don't lie to me. I heard you loud and clear. You're secretly moving money around, and you're using me to fund something shady." Elliot's mask slipped and his expression hardened. "Look, we need to think about our future. This is just a temporary investment that'll pay off big time." "Without my knowledge or consent?" I shot back. "You're stealing from me, Elliot. From our marriage." He stepped closer, his jaw clenched. "I'm doing what I have to do to secure our financial stability. You should be thanking me instead of questioning my methods." I recoiled, suddenly fearful of the man I thought I knew so well. "This isn't you. What happened to the Elliot I married? The one who valued honesty and partnership?" Elliot's lips curved into a cold smile. "That Elliot is gone. This is the real me, Tessa, and if you're not with me, you're against me." I swallowed hard, my mind racing. How could I have been so blind? The man standing before me was a stranger, driven by greed and deception. But I wouldn't let him win, not without a fight. After that sickening confrontation, I knew I couldn't trust a word out of Elliot's mouth. He had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and I needed to protect myself, both emotionally and financially. The next morning, I confided in my best friend Jessica over brunch. Her eyes widened as I recounted Elliot's damning phone conversation and his chilling admission of deception. "That snake!" Jessica hissed, slamming her fist on the table. I knew there was something off about him, but I never imagined he'd stoop this low. I nodded, blinking back tears. I feel like such a fool. All this time I thought we were building a life together, but he's been playing me from the start. Jessica reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Don't beat yourself up, Tess. This is on him, not you. The important thing now is to protect yourself and your assets." Her words resonated with me. For too long, I had been blinded by love and trust, allowing Elliot to take advantage of my vulnerability. But no more. Over the next few days, I started digging into our financial records, cross-checking statements, and tracking where our money was going. The deeper I looked, the more inconsistencies I found. Mysterious withdrawals, offshore accounts, and bogus investment schemes that didn't add up. It became clear that Elliot's betrayal went far beyond emotional manipulation. He had been systematically siphoning funds from our joint accounts, using my hard-earned wealth to fuel his own selfish endeavors. The gravity of his deceit hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just about money. It was about control, power, and utter disregard for the vows we had taken. As the evidence mounted, a cold fury settled in my bones. Elliot had underestimated me, thinking I would remain a meek, oblivious wife forever. But I was done being a victim. It was time to fight back. With Jessica's unwavering support, I started gathering documentation and building a case against Elliot. I knew confronting him directly would only lead to more lies and manipulation, so I needed to be strategic, methodical, and utterly ruthless. No more Mrs. Nice Guy. Elliot had awakened a fire within me, and I was going to make him pay for every ounce of pain and betrayal he had inflicted. With a thick folder of evidence in hand, I steeled myself for the inevitable confrontation with Elliot. It was time to rip off the Band-Aid and expose his lies once and for all. I found him lounging in the living room, casually flipping through his tablet. The sight of his relaxed demeanor made my blood boil. "We need to talk," I said, my voice firm and unwavering. Elliot glanced up, eyebrows raised. "What's up, babe?" I tossed the folder onto the coffee table, and it landed with a thud. "Don't babe me, you lying snake. I know everything." His eyes narrowed as he took in the stack of documents. "What's all this?" "Proof of your deceit," I spat. "Bank statements, wire transfers, offshore accounts, all the dirty little secrets you've been keeping from me." For a moment, Elliot's mask slipped, and I saw a flicker of panic cross his features. But he quickly recovered, leaning back with a sardonic grin. "You've been busy, I see, but you're overreacting as usual. This is all just part of a bigger plan, Tessa, a plan to secure our future." I shook my head, disgusted by his smooth lies. "Cut the crap, Elliot. I know you've been siphoning funds from our accounts, running scams behind my back. And for what, your own selfish gain?" He scoffed, spreading his arms wide. "Is that what you think? That I'd betray the woman I love for a quick buck? You wound me, Tessa." "Spare me the act," I snarled. "I have the evidence right here. You can't talk your way out of this one." Elliot's eyes hardened, and he rose to his feet, towering over me. "Listen carefully, Tessa. Everything I've done has been for us, for our family. If you can't see that, then maybe we're not on the same page after all." I stared back defiantly, refusing to be intimidated. "We're not on any page, Elliot, not anymore. I want a divorce." The words hung in the air like a weighted silence. Elliot's face contorted with rage, and for a terrifying moment, I thought he might lash out physically. But then, just as quickly, his expression smoothed into a chilling calm. "A divorce, huh? Well, if that's what you want, sweetheart, you're in for a rude awakening." He stepped closer, his breath hot on my face. "I'll take you for everything you've got. The house, the cars, the business. It'll all be mine. And when I'm done, you'll be left with nothing but the clothes on your back." I held my ground, meeting his icy glare with unwavering resolve. "We'll see about that." As he stormed out of the room, I allowed myself a small, grim smile. The battle lines had been drawn, and there was no turning back now. But I was ready to fight for my life, my dignity, and everything Elliot had tried to steal from me. This was war, and I had no intention of losing. After that explosive confrontation with Elliot, I knew I had to move quickly to protect myself and my assets. The gloves were off, and he had made it abundantly clear that he was willing to fight dirty to take everything from me. I spent the next few days gathering every shred of evidence I could find: bank statements, property records, tax filings, anything that could be used to untangle our finances and prove Elliot's fraudulent activities. With each document I uncovered, the web of deceit grew more intricate and sickening. It became clear that Elliot had been plotting his betrayal for years, meticulously setting up shell companies and offshore accounts to hide his ill-gotten gains. And all the while, he had been using me as a pawn in his twisted game, siphoning funds from our legitimate business ventures to fuel his own greed. The level of deception was staggering, and it made me question everything I thought I knew about the man I had once loved. How could someone be so calculating, so utterly devoid of conscience? As I pored over the records, a new discovery made my blood run cold. A secret bank account in Elliot's name, with deposits and withdrawals that didn't match any of our known investments or expenses. It was the smoking gun, the undeniable proof that he had been squirreling away millions behind my back. Anger and betrayal burned within me, but I refused to let those emotions cloud my judgment. I needed to stay focused, to gather as much evidence as possible before Elliot caught wind of what I was doing and tried to cover his tracks. With the help of a forensic accountant recommended by Jessica, I began piecing together a comprehensive financial trail, documenting every transaction, every red flag, and every instance of fraud. It was painstaking work, but with each new revelation, my resolve only grew stronger. Midway through the process, I received a chilling reminder of just how high the stakes had become. A private investigator I had hired to dig into Elliot's background uncovered a disturbing piece of information. Elliot had already consulted with a high-powered divorce attorney and was actively preparing to file for dissolution of our marriage. The news hit me like a punch to the gut. Not only had Elliot betrayed me financially and emotionally, but he had also been planning to leave me high and dry, stripped of everything I had worked so hard for. In that moment, I knew there could be no turning back, no compromise or reconciliation. Elliot had declared war, and I had no choice but to meet him on the battlefield, armed with the truth and an unwavering determination to see justice served. From that point on, every waking moment was consumed by the pursuit of evidence and the preparation for the legal battle ahead. I would not be caught off guard, and I would not allow Elliot to steal one more ounce of my dignity or my hard-earned success. This was personal, and I was playing for keeps. As the days ticked by, my investigation into Elliot's misdeeds only deepened. With each new layer I peeled back, the scope of his betrayal became more staggering and more personal. Through my network of contacts in the real estate world, I learned that Elliot had been quietly shopping around our most valuable properties, looking to cash out behind my back. It was a calculated move designed to leave me penniless and powerless in the event of a divorce. The revelation ignited a fresh wave of fury within me. Not only had Elliot stolen from me financially, but he was now actively trying to strip me of the very empire I had built from the ground up. It was a devastating blow, one that threatened to destroy everything I had worked so hard for. I knew then that I couldn't afford to play by the rules anymore. If Elliot was going to fight dirty, then so be it. I would match his ruthlessness with my own brand of cunning and determination. First, I consulted with a team of lawyers, outlining every shred of evidence I had uncovered and laying out my strategy for protecting my assets. They were impressed by the meticulousness of my case, and together we crafted an airtight legal defense designed to neutralize Elliot's every move. Next, I reached out to my most trusted colleagues and business partners, carefully revealing the truth about Elliot's betrayal and rallying their support. Many were shocked and appalled, but they rallied around me, offering their resources and backing to help weather the coming storm. With my allies in place, I took the offensive, striking first before Elliot could make his next move. I filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences in financial fraud, and immediately sought temporary restraining orders to freeze our joint accounts and prevent him from liquidating or transferring any assets. Elliot, caught off guard by my swift action, responded with fury. He bombarded me with angry calls and texts, spewing vile insults and threats, but I remained unfazed. His intimidation tactics held no sway over me anymore. I was beyond fear, driven by a singular purpose: to protect what was rightfully mine and see justice served. The ensuing legal battle was brutal, with both sides unleashing a barrage of accusations and counterclaims. Elliot's high-priced lawyers fought tooth and nail, trying to poke holes in my evidence and cast me as a vindictive, greedy ex-wife. But I stood firm, my unwavering resolve bolstered by the mountain of documentation I had amassed. With each court appearance, each deposition, I presented a meticulous, irrefutable case, laying bare the breadth of Elliot's deceit and financial malfeasance. And through it all, I refused to back down. Refused to let Elliot or his legal team intimidate or gaslight me. This was my fight, my moment to reclaim the power and dignity he had tried to steal from me. No more playing the victim, no more being the dutiful wife. This was war, and I was determined to emerge victorious, no matter the cost. The air was thick with tension as our family and friends gathered for the annual 4th of July barbecue. It was a tradition we had upheld for years, a time to celebrate and strengthen the bonds that held us together. But this year the facade of unity was shattered. Elliot and I regarded each other with barely concealed contempt, our once solid marriage now a hollow shell of bitter resentment and mistrust. As the guests mingled and made small talk, I caught whispers and furtive glances in my direction. Word of our impending divorce had spread like wildfire, fueling speculation and gossip. Elliot, ever the charmer, played the role of the wounded party, regaling anyone who would listen with tales of my supposed greed and unreasonable demands. I seethed in silence, biding my time. I knew Elliot was banking on his ability to manipulate the narrative, to spin his web of lies and cast himself as the victim. But not this time. This time I held all the cards. As the meal wound down and the crowd settled into a contented lull, I cleared my throat and raised my glass. "Can I have everyone's attention, please?" Conversations trailed off, and all eyes turned toward me, curiosity and anticipation etched on every face. "First, I want to thank you all for being here," I began, my voice steady and resolute. "This gathering has always been about family, about cherishing the bonds that hold us together through thick and thin." Elliot shifted in his seat, his expression guarded, sensing the shift in the mood. "Unfortunately," I continued, "not all bonds are meant to last. Some are built on lies and deception, twisted beyond recognition by greed and selfishness." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, and I caught Elliot's eyes narrowing in warning. "For years, I have been the victim of a calculated betrayal," I pressed on, my voice rising. "A betrayal perpetrated by the very man who vowed to love and cherish me, my husband, Elliot." Gasps and shocked whispers filled the air as I laid out the evidence, pulling no punches. Bank statements, financial records, damning proof of Elliot's fraudulent activities. I presented it all, exposing the depth of his duplicity for all to see. Elliot's face flushed with rage, but he remained silent, trapped in the glaring spotlight of truth. "This man," I declared, gesturing toward Elliot, "has stolen from me, lied to me, and plotted to leave me destitute. He has violated the sanctity of our marriage and disgraced the values we all hold dear." The crowd was stunned into silence, their expressions ranging from disbelief to outright disgust. Elliot finally broke, leaping to his feet. "You lying bitch," he snarled, his mask of civility crumbling. "You think you can turn everyone against me with your twisted version of the truth?" I met his gaze unflinchingly. "The truth needs no twisting, Elliot. The evidence speaks for itself." He opened his mouth to retort, but the words died on his lips as he took in the faces of our friends and family, the disappointment, the condemnation etched into their features. In that moment I saw the realization dawn on him. His carefully constructed facade had crumbled, his lies and manipulations laid bare for all to witness. He was exposed, defeated, his power and influence reduced to ashes. A grim satisfaction washed over me as Elliot stormed off, his exit punctuated by the deafening silence of those he had once charmed and deceived. The battle was won, and though the war was far from over, I knew in that moment that justice would ultimately prevail. Elliot's reign of deceit had come to an end, and I had emerged from the ashes, stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever before. This was just the beginning. In the aftermath of my explosive reveal, the gloves truly came off. Elliot, humiliated and enraged, lashed out with a vengeance, unleashing a torrent of legal maneuvers and smear tactics designed to leave me broken and destitute. First came the lawsuit, a sprawling mass of accusations and fabrications aimed at painting me as the villain, a greedy, conniving wife hell-bent on destroying her innocent husband. Elliot's legal team bombarded me with subpoenas and depositions, dragging me through the mud in a desperate bid to discredit my case. But I stood firm, my resolve unwavering. With the support of my own formidable lawyers, I countered Elliot's claims with cold, hard facts, irrefutable evidence of his financial crimes and breaches of trust. Every lie, every distortion, was met with a measured, meticulous rebuttal, leaving no room for doubt or manipulation. As the legal battles raged on, Elliot resorted to more underhanded tactics, launching a vicious smear campaign to tarnish my reputation and turn public opinion against me. He planted false stories in the media, accusing me of everything from embezzlement to infidelity, desperate to regain the moral high ground he had so thoroughly lost. Through it all, I remained focused and steadfast, refusing to be drawn into the mudslinging and character assassination. My allies, the friends and colleagues who had witnessed Elliot's true colors firsthand, rallied around me, providing a bulwark of support against the onslaught of lies and vitriol. And still the fight raged on, each day bringing new challenges and fresh attempts at intimidation. Elliot's lawyers threatened, cajoled, and postured, but I met their every move with a steely resolve, never once wavering in my pursuit of justice. The emotional toll was immense, the stress and strain nearly unbearable at times. There were moments when I wanted nothing more than to give in, to surrender, and walk away from the chaos that had consumed my life. But then I would remember the depths of Elliot's betrayal, the years of lies and manipulation, and a new wave of determination would wash over me. This wasn't just about money or assets anymore. This was about reclaiming my dignity, my self-worth, and the life that Elliot had tried so viciously to destroy. So I pressed on, fueled by a burning desire to see this through to the bitter end, no matter the cost. And as the legal battles escalated, a glimmer of hope began to emerge. Key witnesses came forward, corroborating my evidence and painting a damning portrait of Elliot's misdeeds. Financial records that he had tried to bury resurfaced, shedding further light on the web of deceit he had woven. With each new revelation, Elliot's case grew weaker, his desperate tactics more transparent, and slowly, inexorably, the tide began to turn in my favor. Through it all, I remained resolute, my eyes fixed on the ultimate prize. Not just a legal victory, but a reckoning. A moment of catharsis where Elliot would finally be forced to answer for the pain and suffering he had inflicted. It was a long, arduous road, but I knew in my heart that justice would prevail. And when that day finally came, I would savor every moment, basking in the knowledge that I had emerged from the ashes stronger, wiser, and utterly unbroken. The courtroom was deathly silent as the judge cleared his throat, his gaze sweeping over the assembled parties. After months of bitter legal battles, countless motions and counterclaims, this was the moment of reckoning we had all been waiting for. In the matter of Tessa Somerville versus Elliot Carver, the judge began, his voice ringing out in the hushed chamber, I have carefully considered the evidence and testimonies presented by both sides. My heart hammered in my chest as I exchanged a tense with my lawyer. This was it, the moment that would determine the course of my future, the culmination of everything I had fought for. The judge continued, his words measured and deliberate. The documentation and financial records provided by Mrs. Somerville paint a clear picture of fraud, deception, and gross mishandling of marital assets by Mr. Carver. A ripple of murmurs swept through the gallery, but I remained focused, my eyes fixed on the judge's weathered face. Furthermore, he went on, the testimony of key witnesses and subject matter experts has corroborated Mrs. Somerville's claims, leaving little doubt as to the veracity of her accusations. Elliot shifted in his seat, his jaw clenched and his knuckles whitening as he gripped the edge of the table. In light of the overwhelming evidence, the judge declared, I hereby grant Mrs. Somerville's petition for divorce on grounds of financial fraud and breach of marital trust. A collective gasp echoed through the room, but I barely registered it, too consumed by the wave of relief and validation that washed over me. The judge wasn't finished. Additionally, I am awarding Mrs. Somerville full ownership and control of all marital assets, including properties, investments, and bank accounts. Mr. Carver's claims and countersuits are dismissed in their entirety. My eyes widened in disbelief, the gravity of the ruling sinking in. Not only had I secured my freedom from Elliot's web of deceit, but I had emerged victorious, my financial future and hard-earned success intact. Elliot, on the other hand, was visibly shaken, his face contorted in a mask of rage and disbelief. "This is an outrage," he sputtered, rising to his feet. "You can't do this." But the judge silenced him with a stern glare. "I can, and I have, Mr. Carver. Your actions have been found to be reprehensible and in direct violation of the law. Consider yourself fortunate that criminal charges are not being pursued at this time." As Elliot slumped back into his seat, deflated and defeated, a profound sense of vindication washed over me. After months of turmoil and emotional anguish, justice had finally been served. In the aftermath of the ruling, I found myself overwhelmed by a swirl of emotions: relief, elation, and a newfound sense of empowerment. I had stared down the man who had tried to break me, and I had emerged victorious, my spirit and self-worth intact. As I stepped out into the bright sunlight, surrounded by the well wishes of my friends and supporters, I allowed myself a moment of quiet reflection. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was crystal clear. I was a survivor, a warrior who had faced down adversity and emerged stronger for it. Elliot's betrayal had nearly destroyed me, but in the end it had forged me into a woman of steel, a force to be reckoned with. The scars would linger, but they would serve as a reminder of my resilience, my unwavering determination to fight for what was right. With a deep breath, I squared my shoulders and set my sights on the future, a future of my own making, one where I would write my own destiny, free from the shackles of lies and manipulation. The battle was over, but the war had only just begun, a war for personal growth, for healing, and for the pursuit of a life lived on my own terms. And this time, I was prepared to fight with everything I had. The drive back to Harveston felt like a ticking time bomb. Marshall gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles turning white with every mile closer to the town we once called home. I could sense the tension radiating off him, a storm brewing beneath his usually calm exterior. "You know, we don't have to do this," I said, reaching over to rest my hand on his arm. He exhaled deeply, his shoulders rising and falling with the weight of 1,000 unsaid words. "Yes, we do. Dad needs us, and it's time we face the mess Callie has made of things." Callie. The mere mention of her name ignited a spark of resentment within me. Marshall's sister had always been a thorn in our side, a constant reminder of the dysfunction that plagued his family. As we pulled up to the familiar vineyard estate, the once vibrant rows of grapevines now withered and neglected, a sinking feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. This was supposed to be our fresh start, a chance to help restore the legacy Marshall's father had built from scratch. Callie emerged from the main house, her arms crossed defiantly over her chest. Well, if it isn't the prodigal son and his city slicker wife," she sneered, her words dripping with venom. Marshall stepped forward, his jaw clenched. "Callie, we're here to help Dad, whether you like it or not." "Help?" she spat back. "You abandoned this family years ago, and now you think you can just waltz back in and play the hero?" I placed a hand on Marshall's back, a silent reminder to stay calm. But the anger simmered beneath the surface, threatening to boil over. "We're not going anywhere, Callie," I said firmly. "This is our home too, and we're going to do whatever it takes to save this vineyard, with or without your cooperation." Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I caught a glimpse of the little girl who had always resented her big brother's success. "We'll see about that," she hissed before turning on her heel and storming back inside. As we stood there, the weight of the battle ahead hanging heavy in the air, I knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning of our fight to reclaim what was rightfully ours. The moment we stepped onto the vineyard grounds, the sense of neglect hung thick in the air. Rows upon rows of grapevines withered under the unforgiving sun, their once lush leaves now a sickly brown hue. "This is a disaster," Marshall muttered, running his fingers along the brittle vines. Callie emerged from the shadows, a smug grin plastered across her face. "What did you expect? You left me to handle this place all on my own." "Clearly, you haven't been handling it at all," I retorted, gesturing to the desolate fields surrounding us. Her eyes narrowed, and she took a step closer, her voice laced with venom. "Oh, like you two could do any better. This place was doomed the moment Dad started losing his mind." Marshall's fists clenched at his sides, but before he could respond, a feeble voice called out from behind us. "What's all this ruckus about?" We turned to find Theo shuffling towards us, his once proud stature now hunched and frail. The sight of him broke my heart, this once vibrant man reduced to a mere shell of his former self. "Dad," Marshall said, rushing to his side, "we were just assessing the situation." Theo's eyes narrowed as he surveyed the dying vineyard. "It's fallen into quite a state, hasn't it?" "That's why we're here," I chimed in, shooting a pointed glare at Callie. "To help get things back on track." Callie scoffed, her arms folded defiantly across her chest. "And what exactly do you know about running a vineyard, city girl?" Before I could respond, Marshall stepped between us, his jaw set in determination. "Enough, Callie. Juniper and I have been doing our research, and we have some ideas that could really turn things around." "Oh, you mean like the last time you had a brilliant idea that nearly bankrupted us?" Callie sneered. The air grew thick with tension, and I could see the hurt flickering behind Marshall's eyes. He opened his mouth to respond, but Theo raised a weary hand, silencing us all. "That's enough, both of you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We're a family, and we need to start acting like one if we want to save this place." Callie rolled her eyes, but for once she remained silent. As we stood there, surrounded by the crumbling legacy of everything Theo had built, I knew this was only the beginning of our uphill battle. The musty scent of old ledgers and forgotten paperwork greeted me as I stepped into the dimly lit office. Callie had insisted on handling the vineyard's finances herself, but her constant deflections had raised too many red flags to ignore. I ran my fingers along the dusty shelves, pulling out binder after binder filled with haphazard records. Something wasn't adding up, and I was determined to get to the bottom of it. Hours ticked by as I pored over the numbers, my eyes straining in the weak lamplight. And then, buried beneath a stack of invoices, I found it. A series of unexplained wire transfers, all traceable to an offshore account. My heart pounded as the realization sank in. Callie had been siphoning money from the vineyard right under our noses. The sound of footsteps in the hallway snapped me back to reality. I quickly gathered the incriminating documents, stuffing them into my bag just as the door creaked open. Well, what do we have here?" Callie drawled, leaning against the doorframe. "Snooping where you don't belong, as usual." I straightened my spine, refusing to cower under her accusatory glare. "I think you and I both know exactly what I found in here, Callie." Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment I saw a flicker of panic cross her features. But just as quickly, it was replaced by a cold, calculated smirk. "You don't have a clue what you're talking about," she scoffed. "But by all means, run along and show Marshall your little findings. See if he believes his precious wife over his own flesh and blood." My fingers tightened around the strap of my bag, the documents burning a hole in my side. She was right. Accusing her without concrete proof would only serve to drive a wedge further between Marshall and me. But as I looked into her eyes, cold and unyielding, I knew this was just the beginning. She may have thought she was untouchable, but I would stop at nothing to expose her lies and bring her crumbling empire down around her. "This isn't over, Callie," I said, my voice low and steady. "Not by a long shot." With that, I brushed past her, my mind already whirring with a plan to bring her to justice. She wanted to play dirty? Fine. I was done playing nice. From that moment on, the battle lines were drawn, and I knew there would be no turning back until one of us emerged victorious, no matter the cost. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife as we gathered in Theo's study. Marshall's hand found mine, a silent gesture of solidarity amidst the storm brewing around us. Theo leveled us with a steely gaze, his once warm eyes now clouded with disappointment. I thought bringing you two back would help mend this family, he said, his voice wavering. But all you've done is sow more discord and chaos. Callie sat beside him, her expression one of smug satisfaction as she watched our faces fall. Dad, that's not fair, Marshall protested. We're only trying to help save the vineyard to preserve your legacy. Theo shook his head, his shoulders sagging under an invisible weight. By airing our dirty laundry for all to see? By accusing your own sister of what exactly? I opened my mouth to speak, but Callie beat me to it. Lies and baseless accusations, that's what, she spat, shooting me a venomous glare. Juniper's been trying to turn you against me from the moment they arrived. Can't you see that? Theo's gaze shifted to me, and I felt my heart sink at the flicker of doubt in his eyes. Is this true, Juniper? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to scream, to lay out all the evidence I'd uncovered of Callie's betrayal. But one look at Marshall's pleading expression stopped me in my tracks. Swallowing hard, I forced a tight smile. Of course not, Theo. We're just concerned about the state of things, that's all. Callie's smirk widened as she leaned back in her chair, reveling in her momentary victory. Theo sighed heavily, pinching the bridge of his nose. Then I see no other choice. For the sake of this family, I'm going to have to ask you both to leave Harveston. Immediately. The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind from my lungs. Marshall's grip on my hand tightened as he turned to his father, eyes wide with disbelief. You can't be serious, he stammered. This is our home, our family's legacy. But Theo had already made up his mind, his expression hardening into a mask of grim resignation. As we walked out of that study, the weight of defeat pressing down on us, I caught Callie's eye one last time. Her gloating sneer said it all. She had won this round, but the war was far from over. Steeling my resolve, I vowed to myself that I wouldn't rest until I had exposed her lies and reclaimed what was rightfully ours. No matter how long it took, vengeance would be ours. The weight of Theo's words hung heavy in the air as Marshall and I packed our belongings. Callie had won this battle, but the war was far from over. We can't just give up, Marshall muttered, tossing another shirt into his suitcase. This vineyard is my birthright, our future. I placed a hand on his arm, my touch steadying his frantic movements. And we'll get it back, I assured him. But not like this. Callie's beaten us at her own game for now. His shoulders slumped, resignation seeping into his features. But then a flicker of determination reignited in his eyes. You're right, he said, straightening his spine. If we're going to take her down, we need to play by a different set of rules. A sly grin tugged at my lips as the seeds of a plan took root. I might have an idea about that. Over the next few weeks, we scoured Harveston, until finally we found it, a ramshackle old vineyard on the outskirts of town, ripe for renovation. It's a fixer-upper, for sure, I mused, surveying the overgrown fields and dilapidated buildings. But with a little elbow grease, we could turn this place into a real contender. Marshall's eyes shone with renewed hope as he nodded. Then that's exactly what we'll do. We'll build this place up from the ground, show everyone what true dedication and hard work can achieve. And so we got to work. Day and night, we toiled alongside a small crew of hired hands, pruning back the wild growth and breathing new life into the abandoned structures. All the while, I channeled my marketing expertise into creating a buzz around our fledgling vineyard. Social media campaigns, local event sponsorships, no stone was left unturned in my quest to put our name on the map. Callie, of course, caught wind of our efforts. One sweltering afternoon, as we oversaw the installation of new tasting room furniture, her shrill voice cut through the air like nails on a chalkboard. If it isn't the two village idiots playing make-believe with their little pet project, she sneered, sauntering up to us with her usual air of arrogant superiority. Marshall tensed beside me, but I shot him a warning glance, squeezing his hand to keep him grounded. Why don't you save your breath, Callie? I said, my voice low and even. This pet project is just the beginning. Soon enough, everyone in Harveston will know that there's a new wine empire in town, and you're not running the show anymore. Her eyes narrowed to slits as she processed my words, but I could see the flicker of unease behind her bravado. Deep down, she knew her reign of terror was coming to an end. With a huff of disdain, she spun on her heel and stormed off, leaving us to revel in our small victory. The future stretched out before us, ripe with possibility and the promise of long-awaited payback. This time, we wouldn't be stopped. This time, justice would be ours. The grand reopening of our vineyard was a sight to behold. Sleek new tasting rooms beckoned visitors, while lush, vibrant vines stretched as far as the eye could see, a true testament to our blood, sweat, and tears. As guests began to trickle in, sampling our first offerings and marveling at the transformation, a familiar figure slipped through the crowd. Callie, ever the drama queen, couldn't resist making an appearance. Well, if it isn't Harveston's newest little sideshow, she drawled, sauntering up to me with a condescending smirk. Color me impressed that you two actually managed to get this ramshackle place up and running. I lifted my chin, refusing to be baited by her taunts. Why don't you have a glass, Callie? Maybe you'll finally taste what real quality wine is supposed to be like. Her eyes narrowed at the barb, but before she could retort, a small crowd began gathering around us, drawn in by the palpable tension. Is there a problem here? Marshall appeared at my side, his expression guarded as he took in the scene. Callie's gaze flickered between us, and for a moment I saw a glimmer of unease behind her bravado. Forcing a sickly sweet smile, she waved a dismissive hand. No problem at all, dear brother. I was just admiring your quaint little establishment. The lie was as transparent as her heavily made-up face, but the crowd had already begun to lose interest, drifting back to the tasting counters and live music. Leaning in close, Callie's smile morphed into a sneer. Enjoy your 15 minutes, you two. Before long, this silly little vanity project of yours will be nothing but a distant memory. With that parting shot, she pivoted on her heel and stormed off, leaving a bitter taste lingering in the air. But as the night wore on and the crowds only grew thicker, that bitterness gave way to a newfound sense of triumph. Word was spreading like wildfire, and our wines were the talk of the town. Can you believe this? Marshall murmured, wrapping an arm around my waist as we surveyed the buzzing scene. After everything, we're finally making our mark. I nodded, unable to shake the giddy smile from my face. This is only the beginning, I assured him. Soon the whole region will know the name of our vineyard, and the dark days of the past will be nothing but a distant memory. In that moment, with the sweet taste of success on my lips, I knew our fight was far from over. Callie wouldn't go down without a bitter struggle. But for the first time since our return to Harveston, I allowed myself to revel in the knowledge that we were finally on the path to victory, and vengeance, once so elusive, was finally within our grasp. The sweet taste of success was quickly soured as the whispers began to circulate around Harveston. Rumors of financial impropriety, of embezzlement, and mismanagement, all leading back to the once untouchable Callie. It started with a few disgruntled employees, tired of being pushed around and underpaid. Then, like a spark to kindling, the story caught fire, fanned by years of Callie's arrogance and disregard for anyone but herself. As the allegations piled up, scrutiny from local officials and auditors intensified. Suddenly, the once glamorous Callie found herself backed into a corner, her perfectly curated world crumbling around her. It was almost poetic justice when the news finally broke, a special report on the local news, complete with damning evidence of Callie's misdeeds. Footage of her lavish spending sprees, bank records detailing the siphoned funds, all laid bare for the world to see. Marshall and I watched in stunned silence as the report unfolded, a twisted sense of vindication settling in the pit of my stomach. She brought this on herself, Marshall murmured, his voice thick with a mixture of anger and remorse. All these years, stealing from our family, our legacy. I placed a hand on his arm, offering what little comfort I could. As much as Callie had wronged us, seeing her so thoroughly disgraced had to be a bitter pill to swallow. In the days that followed, the fallout was swift and merciless. Callie found herself ostracized, cut off from the high society circles she'd once ruled with an iron fist. Vendors and suppliers severed ties, leaving the family vineyard in a state of unprecedented chaos. And then, the final nail in the coffin, a visit from Theo himself. Callie's expression was one of pure disbelief as the old man approached us, his face etched with lines of regret and sorrow. "I should have listened to you," he said, his voice heavy with shame. "All this time I let her manipulate me, blind me to the truth." Marshall stepped forward, enveloping our father in a fierce embrace. "It's not too late," he assured him. "We can fix this together." Theo's watery gaze found mine, and in that moment I saw the glimmer of the man he used to be, the strong, proud patriarch who had built an empire from nothing. "Please," he implored, reaching out to grasp my hand, "help me make things right for all of us." As I looked into his pleading eyes, I knew that the long, arduous road to redemption was just beginning. But this time, we would walk it together, as a family, united against the demons that had nearly torn us apart. This was more than just revenge. It was a chance to rebuild, to rise from the ashes of Callie's betrayal and reclaim what was always meant to be ours. And damn it all, if I wasn't going to make sure we seized that chance with every ounce of determination we had left. The air was thick with a heady mix of anticipation and apprehension as we gathered in Theo's study once more. This time, however, the dynamic had shifted. The prodigal children returned, ready to reclaim their birthright. Theo's gaze was heavy with remorse as he regarded us, the weight of his past mistakes etched into the lines of his weathered face. "I don't know how I'll ever be able to make amends for the way I've treated you," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. Letting Callie poison my mind against my own flesh and blood, Marshall reached out, clasping his father's hand in a firm, reassuring grip. "What's done is done, Dad. All that matters now is that we move forward together, as a family." A flicker of hope ignited in Theo's eyes, and he gave a solemn nod. Clearing his throat, he straightened his shoulders, a ghost of his former commanding presence shining through. "Which is why I'm entrusting the future of this vineyard to the two of you." The words hung in the air, their weight nearly palpable. I shot a sidelong glance at Marshall, searching his expression for any trace of hesitation or doubt, but all I saw was steadfast determination. "We won't let you down," he vowed, his voice thick with conviction. "The Harveston name will be restored to its former glory, and then some." A small, proud smile tugged at the corners of Theo's mouth. "I have no doubt about that, son." His gaze shifted to me, and the warmth in his eyes was like a soothing balm after years of Callie's icy disdain. "You've both proven yourselves time and again. This vineyard couldn't be in better hands." As we embraced, a wave of emotions threatened to overwhelm me. After everything we'd endured, the betrayal, the pain, the relentless fight for justice, we had finally emerged victorious. The path ahead was littered with challenges, to be sure, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I allowed myself to bask in the sweet taste of vindication. Later that night, as Marshall and I strolled through the verdant fields that would soon be under our care, I couldn't help but steal a glance toward the dilapidated buildings in the distance, remnants of Callie's crumbling empire. A pang of something akin to pity tugged at my heart. She had brought this ruin upon herself, yes, but some small part of me still mourned the loss of the bright, vibrant young woman she'd once been, before greed and jealousy had twisted her into a mere shadow of her former self. As if sensing the direction of my thoughts, Marshall gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "She'll find her way back," he murmured. "If there's one thing I've learned, it's that redemption is always possible, if you're willing to fight for it." I nodded, leaning into the solid warmth of his embrace as we watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues of gold and crimson. A new dawn was on the horizon, ripe with second chances and the promise of a brighter future. And this time, nothing and no one would stand in our way. I stare at the bank statement, my heart pounding. The numbers don't add up. Thousands of dollars, gone without a trace. I didn't make these withdrawals. Ash and I have a joint savings account, but he's never mentioned needing extra money. Something's not right. I call out to him, trying to keep my voice steady. "Ash, have you been moving our savings? There are transactions I don't recognize." He walks into the room, his face a mask of confusion. "What are you talking about, Lorelli? I haven't touched our savings." I show him the statement, pointing to the mysterious withdrawals. His eyes widen for a split second before he composes himself. "I'm sure it's just a mistake. The bank probably messed up. I'll give them a call and sort it out." But I know he's lying. I can see it in the way his jaw clenches, the way he avoids my gaze. My husband, the man I've trusted for years, is hiding something from me. I nod, pretending to accept his explanation. "Okay, thanks. Let me know what they say." As he leaves the room, I make a decision. I need to find out what he's up to. I can't just sit back and watch our savings disappear. That afternoon, while Ash is at work, I drive to the electronics store. I purchase a small GPS tracker, one that can be easily hidden in a car. I've never done anything like this before, but desperate times call for desperate measures. When Ash gets home that evening, I'm waiting for him in the garage. As he steps out of the car, I greet him with a smile, my heart racing. "How was your day, honey?" He shrugs, his eyes darting away from mine. Same old, nothing exciting." I nod, watching as he heads into the house. As soon as he's out of sight, I crouch down and attach the GPS tracker to the underside of his car. My hands shake as I secure it in place. I don't want to believe that Ash is capable of betraying me, but the evidence is mounting. The secretive phone calls, the late nights at the office, and now the missing money. I need answers, and I'll do whatever it takes to get them. That night, as I lie in bed next to my sleeping husband, I stare at the tracking app on my phone. The blinking dot represents Ash's car, parked in our driveway. I take a deep breath, knowing that tomorrow I'll finally start to unravel the truth. I never imagined I'd be playing detective in my own marriage, but here I am. My once perfect life is crumbling around me, and I'm determined to find out why. No matter what it takes, I will get to the bottom of this. As I drift off to sleep, my mind races with possibilities. What will I discover when I start following Ash's movements? Is he really leading a double life, or am I just being paranoid? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain. My world will never be the same again. The next morning, I wake up with a sense of dread. I check the GPS tracker app on my phone and see that Ash's car is already on the move. I quickly get dressed and hop into my own vehicle, my heart pounding as I follow the blinking dot on the screen. The app leads me to a rundown apartment complex on the other side of town. I park a few blocks away and watch as Ash's car pulls into the lot. He gets out and heads inside, glancing around as if to make sure no one is watching. I wait for what feels like hours, my mind racing with possibilities. Is he meeting someone here? Is this where our missing money is going? Finally, Ash emerges from the building. I duck down in my seat, praying he doesn't spot me. He gets into his car and drives off, oblivious to my presence. I take a deep breath and approach the apartment complex. I find the unit Ash entered and knock on the door, my heart in my throat. A woman answers, her eyes widening when she sees me. "Can I help you?" I push past her into the apartment, my eyes scanning the room for any sign of Ash. "Where is he?" The woman looks confused. "Where is who? I don't know what you're talking about." I turn to face her, my anger boiling over. "Don't play dumb with me. I saw my husband come here. What's going on between you two?" The woman's face pales. "Your husband? I don't know any married men." I scoff, not believing her for a second. "Right, and I suppose he just comes here to chat?" I storm out of the apartment, my mind reeling. I knew Ash was hiding something, but an affair? How could he do this to me? I spend the rest of the day in a daze, going through the motions at work while my thoughts consume me. When I get home that evening, Ash is already there, acting as if nothing is wrong. I confront him, my voice shaking with anger. "I followed you today, Ash. I know about the apartment and the woman." He looks at me, his expression a mix of shock and indignation. "You followed me? What the hell, Lauralee? Don't you trust me?" I laugh bitterly. "Trust you? How can I trust you when you're sneaking around behind my back?" Ash's face hardens. "You're being paranoid. I'm not cheating on you. I was just helping a friend out with something." I shake my head, not buying his lies. "A friend? Is that what we're calling her now? I saw the way you looked around before going inside. You didn't want anyone to see you." Ash throws his hands up in frustration. "You know what? I'm not going to stand here and be accused of something I didn't do. If you can't trust me, that's your problem." He grabs his keys and storms out of the house, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I sink onto the couch, my head in my hands. How did we get here? How did my once loving husband turn into a liar and a cheat? I know I can't just sit back and let him get away with this. I need to find out the truth, no matter how painful it may be. I pull out my phone and start searching for private investigators in the area. If Ash won't come clean, I'll find someone who can uncover his secrets for me. As I scroll through the listings, a sense of determination washes over me. I will not be played for a fool. I will not let Ash destroy our marriage without a fight. One way or another, I will get to the bottom of this. And when I do, there will be hell to pay. Days turn into weeks as I obsessively track Ash's every move. The GPS tracker reveals a pattern of frequent visits to the mysterious apartment, often during times he claims to be working late or going out with friends. I can't take the uncertainty anymore. I need to see with my own eyes what he's doing there. On a sunny afternoon, I follow Ash to the apartment complex, parking a safe distance away. I watch as he enters the building, my heart racing with anticipation. Minutes later, a woman emerges from the same unit. She's young and attractive, with long dark hair and a confident stride. I snap a few photos of her with my phone, my hands shaking. As I sit there gathering evidence of my husband's betrayal, I feel a tap on my window. I jump, turning to see Ash standing outside my car, his face contorted with rage. I step out, my chin held high. "How long has this been your secret, Ash?" He grabs my arm, his grip tight. "What the hell are you doing here, Loralee? Are you spying on me?" I yank my arm away, glaring at him. "I wouldn't have to if you weren't sneaking around with another woman." Ash looks around, his voice lowered. "Keep your voice down. You don't know what you're talking about." I show him the photos on my phone, my eyes filled with tears. "I know exactly what I'm talking about. Who is she, Ash? How long have you been seeing her?" He runs a hand through his hair, his expression a mix of anger and frustration. "Her name is Mallory, and it's not what you think." I scoff, not believing him for a second. "Really? So you're not sleeping with her? You're not using our savings to fund your little love nest?" Ash's face pales. "You don't understand. It's complicated." I shake my head, my heart breaking. "No, it's not. You're cheating on me, plain and simple, and you're using our hard-earned money to do it." He grabs my shoulders, his eyes desperate. "Loralee, please, just let me explain." I push him away, my voice cold. "I don't want to hear your excuses. I want you to end things with her. Now." Ash's jaw clenches. "I can't do that. Mallory and we have something special, something I've never had with you." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stare at him, my vision blurred with tears. "So that's it, then? You're choosing her over me? Over our marriage?" He looks away, his voice quiet. "I'm sorry, Loralee. I never meant for you to find out like this." I let out a bitter laugh. "You never meant for me to find out at all. You were just going to keep lying to me, day after day, while you played house with your mistress." Ash reaches for me, but I step back. "Don't touch me. I can't even look at you right now." I get back in my car, my heart shattered into a million pieces. As I drive away, I see Mallory watching from the apartment window, a smug smile on her face. I vow to myself that this isn't over. I won't let Ash and his mistress destroy everything we've built together. I'll hire the best divorce lawyer in town. I'll find a way to make Ash pay for what he's done. But first, I need to gather more evidence. I need to document every lie, every betrayal, every penny he spent on his secret life. Ash may think he's gotten away with it, but he has no idea what's coming. I will make sure he regrets the day he ever decided to cheat on me. In the days following the confrontation, Ash grows increasingly distant and cruel. He stays out late, ignores my calls, and treats me with a cold indifference that cuts deeper than any argument ever could. I try to stay strong, focusing on gathering evidence of his infidelity. I go through his email, his social media accounts, anything that might give me a clue about his double life. That's when I find it, an email exchange between Ash and Mallory, filled with intimate details and plans for the future. They talk about starting a family together, about Mallory going off her birth control so they can have a baby. I feel sick to my stomach as I read their words. How could Ash do this to me? How could he plan a whole new life with another woman while still married to me? I print out the emails, my hands shaking with rage. I confront Ash that evening, slamming the papers down on the dinner table. "What the hell is this, Ash? You're planning to have a baby with her." He looks at the emails, his face a mask of indifference. "You wouldn't understand, Loralee. Some of us want more from life." I stare at him, my mouth hanging open in shock. "More from life? What about the life we have together? What about our marriage?" Ash shrugs, his voice cold. "Our marriage was a mistake. I never should have settled for you." His words cut me like a knife. I feel tears streaming down my face, but I refuse to let him see me break. Settled for me? Is that what you call the last 10 years of our lives together? He stands up, his eyes narrowed. Don't play the victim, Loralee. You knew I was never happy with our boring suburban life. Mallory understands me in a way you never could. I shake my head, my heart shattering into a million pieces. I gave up everything for you, Ash. My career, my dreams, all so I could be the perfect wife you always wanted. He scoffs, grabbing his jacket. Well, I guess that wasn't enough for me. I'm done living a lie. As he walks out the door, I crumple to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. How did my life come to this? How did the man I love turn into such a monster? I stay there for hours, crying until I have no tears left. When I finally pick myself up off the ground, I feel a new sense of determination rising within me. I won't let Ash get away with this. I won't let him destroy our marriage and walk away unscathed. I start making plans, researching divorce lawyers, and gathering all the evidence I can find of Ash's betrayal. I'll take him for everything he's worth, even if it means dragging his name through the mud. As I work, I stumble upon something even more shocking. Ash has been embezzling money from his company, funneling it into a secret account in Mallory's name. I feel a surge of triumph as I print out the bank statements. This is the smoking gun I need to take Ash down. I make copies of everything, storing them in a safe deposit box at the bank. I won't let Ash wriggle his way out of this one. He thinks he's so clever, so untouchable. But he has no idea what's coming for him. I'll make him pay for every lie, every betrayal, every heart-wrenching moment he's put me through. Ash may have started this war, but I'll be the one to finish it. And when I'm done, he'll wish he never laid eyes on Mallory. Just when I think things can't get any worse, I receive a letter from a lawyer. My hands tremble as I open the envelope, my heart pounding in my chest. The words on the page blur before my eyes. Ash has filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. He's claiming that I've been emotionally abusive, that I've made his life a living hell. But that's not the worst part. The papers state that I've agreed to a settlement, that I've signed away my rights to our house, our savings, everything we've built together. I feel like I can't breathe. I never signed any settlement papers. Ash must have forged my signature, just like he did with the bank statements. I call the lawyer's office, my voice shaking with anger. They confirm that the papers were filed by Ash, that he presented them with a signed agreement. I hang up the phone, my mind racing. How could Ash stoop so low? How could he try to rob me of everything I've worked so hard for? I confront him that night, the divorce papers clutched in my hand. He's sitting on the couch, watching TV like he doesn't have a care in the world. What the hell is this, Ash? You filed for divorce without even talking to me. He looks up at me, his expression bored. Loralee, I've moved on. It's better for both of us. You'll see. I wave the papers in his face, my voice rising with each word. Better for both of us. You forged my signature, Ash. You're trying to take everything from me. He stands up, his eyes cold. I'm just taking what's rightfully mine. You've been holding me back for years, Loralee. It's time for me to start living my life the way I want to. I feel my anger boiling over. I lunge at him, hitting him with the papers, screaming at the top of my lungs. He grabs my wrists, his grip tight. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Loralee. Just sign the papers and walk away. You don't want to fight me on this. I wrench myself free, my eyes blazing with fury. Oh, I don't. Watch me, Ash. I'll fight you with everything I have. I won't let you get away with this. He smirks, his expression smug. You don't have a choice. I've got the law on my side, Dido. No one will believe a word you say against me. I step back, my voice low and dangerous. We'll see about that. I've got proof of everything you've done. The embezzlement, the forgery, all of it. You're going down, Ash. His face pales for a moment before he regains his composure. You're bluffing. You don't have anything on me. I smile, a cold, calculated grin. Try me. I've got copies of everything, stored away where you'll never find them. If you don't back off, I'll make sure the whole world knows what a lying, cheating scumbag you really are. Ash's jaw clenches, his eyes narrowing. You wouldn't dare. I step forward, my face inches from his. Watch me. I've got nothing left to lose, Ash. You've taken everything from me, but I won't let you win. I'll fight you until my last breath. He steps back, his expression wary. You're making a big mistake, Loralee. You don't know who you're messing with. I laugh, a harsh, brittle sound. Oh, I know exactly who I'm messing with. A pathetic, small-minded man who thinks he can do whatever he wants without consequences. But you're wrong, Ash, and I'm going to prove it. I turn and walk out of the room, my head held high. Ash may have started this war, but I'll be the one to finish it. I've reached my breaking point, and now there's no going back. I'll make Ash pay for everything he's done, no matter what it takes. I spend the next few days gathering all the evidence I have against Ash. Bank statements, email exchanges, phone records, anything that proves his infidelity and financial fraud. I meet with a divorce lawyer, a fierce woman named Samantha, who assures me that we have a strong case. She's confident that we can not only nullify the forged settlement agreement, but also secure a favorable divorce settlement for me. But I want more than just a settlement. I want Ash to suffer the way he's made me suffer. I want him to feel the pain of losing everything he holds dear. I start by going through Ash's laptop while he's at work. I find even more evidence of his illegal dealings, including falsified expense reports and offshore bank accounts. I save everything to a flash drive, my heart racing with excitement. This is the ammunition I need to take Ash down once and for all. That evening, I confront him with the evidence. He's sitting at the kitchen table, going over some paperwork. You underestimated me, Ash. It's time I take control of my life. He looks up at me, his expression wary. What are you talking about, Loralee? I slide the flash drive across the table, a triumphant smile on my face. I've got proof of everything you've done. The embezzlement, the fraud, all of it. If you don't agree to my terms, I'll make sure this information gets into the right hands. Ash's face pales. He reaches for the flash drive, but I snatch it back. Not so fast. I want a divorce on my terms. I want the house, the cars, the savings accounts, everything. And I want you to sign a confession admitting to your crimes. He looks at me, his eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. You don't have the guts to go through with this. I laugh, a cold, harsh sound. Try me, Ash. I've got nothing left to lose. You've taken everything from me, but now I'm taking it all back. He stands up, his fists clenched. You crazy bitch. You think you can blackmail me? I'll destroy you. I stand my ground, my voice calm and steady. Go ahead and try, but remember, I've got copies of everything. If anything happens to me, the truth will come out. You'll lose everything. Ash's shoulders slump. He knows he's beaten. Fine, I'll give you what you want, but this isn't over, Loralee. You'll regret this. I smile, a cold, calculating grin. We'll see about that. Now, sign the papers. He does as I ask, his hand shaking with rage. When he's finished, I take the papers and the flash drive and walk out of the room. I feel a sense of triumph washing over me. For the first time in months, I feel like I'm in control of my own life. But I know this is just the beginning. Ash won't go down without a fight. He'll try to wriggle his way out of this, just like he always does. I need to stay one step ahead of him. I need to make sure that everyone knows the truth about who he really is. I start making plans, reaching out to old friends and contacts. I'll need all the help I can get if I'm going to take Ash down for good. But I'm ready for the fight. I've been through hell and back, and I've come out stronger than ever. Ash may have underestimated me, but he'll soon learn the true meaning of karma. I'll make sure of it. With the evidence of Ash's fraud and infidelity in hand, I decide it's time to take my revenge to the next level. I want to destroy his reputation, to make sure that everyone knows the kind of man he really is. I start by sending anonymous tips to his company's HR department, detailing his embezzlement and unethical behavior. I include copies of the falsified expense reports and bank statements, leaving no room for doubt. Next, I reach out to a journalist friend of mine, feeding her the story of Ash's affair and financial fraud. She's thrilled to have such a juicy scoop and promises to run the story on the front page of the local newspaper. But I'm not done yet. I want Ash to feel the full weight of his actions, to suffer the consequences in front of everyone he knows. I wait until the day of his big business meeting, the one he's been preparing for weeks. I know all the top executives will be there, hanging on his every word. I dress in my best suit and march into the office building, my head held high. I ignore the curious stares and whispers as I make my way to the conference room. I burst through the doors, interrupting Ash mid-sentence. He looks up at me, his face a mask of shock and anger. "What the hell are you doing here, Lorelei?" I smile, a cold, triumphant grin. "I'm here to tell everyone the truth about you, Ash, the kind of man you really are." I turn to face the room, my voice loud and clear. "Ladies and gentlemen, my husband Ash is a liar and a cheat. He's been embezzling money from this company for years, using it to fund his affair with his mistress." The room erupts in gasps and murmurs. Ash's face turns a deep shade of red. "She's lying. Don't listen to her." But I'm not finished. I pull out the copies of the bank statements and expense reports, passing them around the room. I have proof of everything. Ash has been stealing from this company, from all of you. He's a fraud and a criminal. Ash lunges at me, his eyes blazing with fury. "Shut up, you crazy bitch. You're ruining everything." I dodge his grasp, my voice rising with each word. "No, Ash, you ruined everything. You ruined our marriage, our life together, and now you're going to pay for it." The executives are on their feet now, their faces a mix of shock and disgust. They surround Ash, demanding answers, threatening to call the police. I watch as he crumbles under the weight of his lies, his once perfect facade shattering into a million pieces. I feel a sense of satisfaction washing over me. Finally, Ash is getting what he deserves. Finally, the world can see him for the monster he really is. As I turn to leave, I hear Ash's voice, low and desperate. "Lorelei, please, don't do this. I'm sorry for everything." I pause, my hand on the doorknob. For a moment, I feel a flicker of pity for the man I once loved. But then I remember all the pain he's caused me, all the lies and betrayal. I look back at him, my voice cold and unforgiving. "It's too late for apologies, Ash. You made your choice. Now you have to live with the consequences." I walk out of the room, my head held high. I know that this is just the beginning of Ash's downfall. I know that he'll lose everything, his job, his reputation, his precious Mallory. But I don't care. I've already lost everything that mattered to me. And now, thanks to my revenge, Ash will know exactly how that feels. The fallout from my public exposure of Ash's crimes is swift and merciless. Within days, he's fired from his job, his professional reputation in tatters. The news of his affair and embezzlement spreads like wildfire, making headlines in every local paper and news channel. Mallory, of course, is quick to distance herself from the scandal. She releases a statement claiming that she had no idea about Ash's illegal activities, and that she's as much a victim as anyone else. I watch it all unfold with a sense of grim satisfaction. Finally, Ash is getting a taste of his own medicine. Finally, he's the one who's lost everything. But my victory is bittersweet. Even as I revel in Ash's downfall, I can't help but feel a sense of emptiness inside. My marriage, my life as I knew it, is gone forever. And no amount of revenge can change that. I throw myself into the divorce proceedings, determined to get everything I'm entitled to. Thanks to the evidence of Ash's financial fraud, I'm able to secure a generous settlement. The house, the cars, the majority of our savings. Ash, of course, fights me every step of the way. He tries to paint me as a vindictive, unstable woman who's out to ruin his life. But in the end, the truth speaks for itself. The judge sees through his lies and manipulations, and I come out on top. As I sign the final divorce papers, I feel a sense of relief wash over me. It's over. I'm free. I move into a new apartment, determined to start fresh. I reconnect with old friends, take up new hobbies, and focus on rebuilding my life. But even as I move forward, I can't shake the feeling that something is missing. I realize that, in my quest for revenge, I've lost sight of who I am and what I want. One day I run into Ash on the street. He looks haggard and defeated, a far cry from the confident, charming man I once knew. "Lorelei," he says, his voice hoarse, "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything." I look at him, my eyes cold. "It's too late for apologies, Ash. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them." He nods, his shoulders slumping. "I know. I just wanted you to know that I never meant to hurt you. I was stupid and selfish, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life." I feel a flicker of something, pity perhaps, or understanding. But I push it aside. "I'm not interested in your regrets, Ash. I'm moving on with my life, and I suggest you do the same." He gives me a sad smile. "I'm trying, Lorelei, but it's not easy. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I threw it all away." I shake my head. "No, Ash, I was just a convenience to you. someone to keep up appearances while you pursued your own selfish desires. But I'm not that person anymore. I turn to walk away, but Ash calls out after me. Lauralee, wait. I know I have no right to ask, but do you think you could ever forgive me? I pause, my back to him. For a moment, I'm tempted to say yes, to let go of all the anger and pain and resentment, but then I remember all the lies, all the betrayal, and I know that forgiveness is a luxury I can't afford. No, Ash, I can't forgive you, but I can forget you, and that's exactly what I intend to do. I walk away, my head held high. I know that my journey is far from over, that there will be more challenges and obstacles ahead. But for now, I'm content in the knowledge that I've taken back my life, that I've proven to myself and to the world that I'm a survivor. I'm not just surviving, Ash. I'm thriving, and that's something you'll never be able to take away from me. The doorbell rang, and Liana rushed to open it, greeted by the smiling faces of her boyfriend's family. They had arrived early for the surprise party, insisting on helping with the setup despite Liana's protests. As Dahlia, Reed's mother, stepped inside, she enveloped Liana in a warm embrace. "Oh, darling, you shouldn't have gone through all this trouble." Liana forced a smile, trying to hide her discomfort with Dahlia's constant displays of affection. "It's no trouble at all. Reed deserves a special celebration for his new job." Dahlia waved her hand dismissively. "Nonsense, dear. You know I'm happy to chip in for the expenses. After all, you're practically family now." Before Liana could respond, Dahlia had already made her way to the kitchen, rifling through the cabinets and critiquing the party preparations. As the guests started arriving, Liana found herself swept up in a whirlwind of activity, greeting friends and colleagues, ensuring everyone had drinks and snacks. It wasn't until later, when she went to retrieve a bottle of wine, that she noticed an envelope tucked behind the dish rack. Curious, she opened it and found a credit card statement addressed to her. Her heart sank as she scanned the charges. Extravagant purchases at high-end boutiques, spa treatments, and lavish dinners, all totaling thousands of dollars. Liana felt dizzy, her mind racing. She had never applied for this credit card, and the billing address was unfamiliar. Clutching the statement, she stormed into the living room where Dahlia was holding court, regaling guests with tales of her latest charity endeavors. "Dahlia," Liana interrupted, her voice trembling with anger. "Care to explain this?" Dahlia glanced at the statement, a flicker of recognition crossing her face before she quickly composed herself. "Oh, that? I simply opened a card in your name, darling. Your credit is so much better than mine, and I needed a little boost for some personal expenses." The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on the two women. "You what?" Liana's voice rose, incredulous. "You can't just open a credit card in my name without my permission." Dahlia shrugged, unperturbed. "Calm down, dear. It's the least you could do since you're living here rent-free. Think of it as your contribution to the household." Liana's hands shook with rage as she stared at the woman who had so casually betrayed her trust. In that moment, she knew their relationship had irreparably fractured, and the true depths of Dahlia's deceit had only begun to surface. In the days following the disastrous party, tension simmered beneath the surface of Dahlia's immaculate home. Liana found herself walking on eggshells, bracing for the next confrontation or underhanded remark from her boyfriend's mother. "You know, dear, it's really not that big of a deal," Dahlia said one evening, waving her hand nonchalantly as they sat down for dinner. "A little credit card debt is nothing compared to the sacrifices I've made for this family." Liana gripped her fork tightly, biting back a retort. She knew better than to engage with Dahlia's twisted logic. Reed, sensing the mounting tension, cleared his throat. "Mom, what Liana's trying to say is that it's illegal to open a credit card in someone else's name. It's fraud." Dahlia scoffed, spearing a piece of meat with her fork. "Don't be so dramatic, Reed. Liana's practically a part of this family. What's mine is hers, and vice versa." Liana felt her blood boil at the casual dismissal of her financial autonomy. "That's not how it works, Dahlia. You can't just help yourself to my credit and personal information without my consent." "Oh, please," Dahlia sneered. "As if you've ever had to worry about money. You've got that fancy job of yours, while my son struggles to make ends meet. The least you could do is contribute a little to this household." Reed shifted uncomfortably in his seat, avoiding Liana's gaze. I pay my share of the bills, Liana insisted, her voice strained. And even if I didn't, that doesn't give you the right to steal from me. Dahlia's eyes narrowed, and she leaned back in her chair. Steal? Such a strong word. I merely borrowed a little credit, that's all. And you'll get it all back once Reed finds a stable job and can start supporting us properly. Liana stared at her boyfriend, a sinking feeling in the pit of her stomach. She had known about Reed's struggles to find fulfilling work, but the way Dahlia phrased it made it sound like he was an utter failure, a burden on the family. As the weeks passed, Liana found herself drowning in a sea of emotional manipulation and financial abuse. Dahlia would make snide comments about Liana's extravagant lifestyle, while simultaneously demanding that she contribute more to the household expenses. After all, Dahlia would say, her voice dripping with false sweetness, we're family now. And family takes care of each other. Liana knew she was being slowly suffocated by Dahlia's toxic grip, but she felt powerless to escape. Reed, caught between his mother's demands and his love for Liana, grew increasingly distant and withdrawn. It wasn't until Liana received a call from a debt collector, demanding payment on a loan she had never taken out, that the full extent of Dahlia's deception began to unravel. With shaking hands, Liana hung up the phone, her mind reeling from the debt collector's accusations. Another loan, taken out in her name without her knowledge or consent. She felt sick to her stomach, the weight of Dahlia's betrayal crushing her. She stormed into the living room, where Dahlia was lounging on the couch, flipping through a magazine. What is this? Liana demanded, thrusting the loan statement towards her. You took out another loan in my name? Dahlia barely glanced up from her reading. Oh, that? It was just a small personal loan to cover some expenses. Nothing to get worked up about. Liana's hands clenched into fists at her sides. Nothing to get worked up about? Dahlia, this is fraud. You're ruining my credit, my financial future, all for your own selfish gain. Don't be so melodramatic, Dahlia chided, setting down her magazine. I'll pay it back eventually. It's not like you're hurting for money with that fancy job of yours. Liana fought back tears of frustration. That's not the point. You had no right to take out loans or credit cards in my name without my knowledge or consent. It's illegal. Dahlia sighed heavily, as if Liana were a petulant child throwing a tantrum. You're overreacting, dear. It's just a little debt. Hardly the end of the world. It is to me, Liana shouted, her voice cracking with emotion. You've completely violated my trust, my personal boundaries. How can I ever feel safe or secure in this house when you're constantly stealing from me? Dahlia's eyes narrowed, her saccharine mask slipping. Watch your tone, young lady. This is still my house, and you'd do well to remember that. Liana's heart pounded in her chest as she stared down the woman who had once seemed like a loving, if overbearing, mother figure. Now she saw Dahlia for what she truly was, a master manipulator who would stop at nothing to maintain her lavish lifestyle, even if it meant destroying the lives of those around her. In that moment, Liana knew she couldn't continue living under Dahlia's toxic roof. She had to find a way out, to reclaim her financial autonomy and protect herself from further exploitation. As she turned and stormed out of the room, Liana made a silent vow to herself. She would document every shred of evidence, every deceitful action Dahlia had taken against her. And then, when the time was right, she would make sure Dahlia paid for her crimes. The first step, Liana decided, was to seek legal counsel. She needed to understand her rights and options for protecting herself from Dahlia's escalating schemes. With a renewed sense of determination, she picked up her phone and started researching attorneys specializing in fraud and identity theft cases. A few days later, Liana received a call from her bank, inquiring about an unusual withdrawal from her savings account. Her heart sank as the representative detailed the hefty sum that had been transferred to an unfamiliar investment account. Hands trembling, Liana thanked the representative and hung up the phone. She knew, without a doubt, that this latest financial disaster was Dahlia's doing. She found Reed in the backyard, tinkering with his old truck. We need to talk, she said, her voice shaking with barely contained fury. Reed looked up, his brow furrowed with concern. What's wrong? Liana thrust the bank statement towards him. Your mother has been stealing from my savings account. Thousands of dollars transferred to some bogus investment account. Reed's eyes widened, as he scanned the document. "That can't be right. Mom wouldn't do something like that. Wouldn't she?" Liana challenged. "After everything she's already done, the credit cards, the loans, this is just the next step in her twisted scheme to bleed me dry." Reed ran a hand through his hair, shaking his head in disbelief. "But she said it was for a business investment, a way for us to get ahead financially." Liana let out a bitter laugh. "And you actually believed her? Reed, open your eyes. Your mother is a con artist, plain and simple. She's been manipulating both of us from the start." Reed's shoulders slumped, and he wouldn't meet Liana's gaze. I had no idea she was taking money from your accounts. She said it was a joint investment, that you were on board with it." "Well, she lied," Liana spat, "just like she's been lying about everything else. How much more proof do you need that your mother is a criminal?" Reed flinched at her harsh words, but Liana couldn't find it in herself to soften the blow. She was done coddling him, done making excuses for his willful ignorance of his mother's misdeeds. "I'm sorry, Liana," Reed said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "I should have seen what was happening. I should have stopped her." "Yes, you should have," Liana agreed, her anger simmering just below the surface. "But you didn't. And now, thanks to your mother's greed and your blind loyalty to her, I'm the one left picking up the pieces." She could see the guilt and shame etched onto Reed's face, but in that moment, she found it difficult to muster any sympathy for him. He had chosen his mother's twisted version of reality over the truth, and Liana was the one paying the price. As she turned to leave, Liana felt a newfound sense of resolve. Dahlia had crossed a line, one that could never be uncrossed. It was time to stop playing by her rules, to stop letting herself be the victim. Liana would take back control of her life, her finances, and her future. And if Reed couldn't see the truth, if he continued to enable his mother's criminal behavior, then he would be collateral damage in Liana's quest for justice. Because this time, Dahlia had awoken a force she couldn't possibly comprehend. A woman pushed to her limits, hell-bent on revenge and redemption. In the days following the revelation about her stolen savings, Liana felt a burning rage simmering within her. She was done being Dahlia's victim, done playing by the rules of a game she hadn't agreed to. As she pored over the mounting evidence of Dahlia's financial crimes against her, the fraudulent credit cards, the unauthorized loans, the drained savings account, a plan began to take shape in Liana's mind, a plan for revenge, for justice, for reclaiming her autonomy once and for all. The first step was to secure what little remained of her finances. Liana made a series of phone calls, freezing her credit reports and closing any accounts that Dahlia might have access to. She knew it would be a long, arduous process to repair the damage, but she was determined to regain control. Next, she reached out to a credit repair service, determined to document every shred of Dahlia's deceit and hold her accountable. The representative she spoke with was sympathetic, guiding her through the necessary steps to build a case against her boyfriend's mother. With each passing day, Liana's resolve grew stronger. She began compiling a meticulous paper trail, collecting statements and records, piecing together the full scope of Dahlia's schemes. Dahlia, of course, remained oblivious to Liana's machinations, or perhaps she simply didn't care. Her casual disregard for the pain and destruction she had caused only fueled Liana's fury. "You'll get your money back eventually, dear," Dahlia would say with a dismissive wave of her hand. "No need to make such a fuss." But Liana knew better. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about justice, about exposing Dahlia for the manipulative, deceitful monster she truly was. As she plotted her revenge, Liana made a point to keep her distance from Reed. She couldn't bear to look at him, to see the echoes of his mother's betrayal reflected in his eyes. He had chosen his side, and Liana was done trying to make him see reason. Instead, she focused her energy on the final phase of her plan, a public reckoning that would strip away Dahlia's carefully cultivated facade and expose her misdeeds to the world. Liana knew that Dahlia's true Achilles' heel was her reputation, her status within the community, so she would strike at the very heart of Dahlia's pride, using the woman's own social ambitions against her. The pieces were falling into place, and as Liana put the finishing touches on her meticulously crafted scheme, she felt a sense of grim satisfaction. Dahlia had underestimated her, had mistaken her kindness for weakness. But Liana was done being the victim. It was time for the hunter to become the hunted, for the scales of justice to finally tip in her favor. And when the dust settled, Dahlia would learn a harsh lesson, that some debts can never be repaid, and that the price of deceit is always, inevitably, ruin. The night of Dahlia's lavish charity gala arrived, and Liana could barely contain her anticipation. Months of meticulous planning had led to this moment, the culmination of her quest for revenge against the woman who had so callously betrayed her trust. As she stepped out of the car, smoothing the fabric of her elegant gown, Liana surveyed the opulent mansion where the event was being held. Dahlia had truly outdone herself, sparing no expense to impress the who's who of their city's elite social circles. Liana plastered a polite smile on her face as she made her way through the crowd of well-heeled guests, sipping champagne and exchanging air kisses. She knew that beneath the veneer of wealth and sophistication, there lurked a darkness. A web of lies and deceit spun by Dahlia herself, and tonight she would unravel that web for all to see. As the evening wore on, Liana bided her time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. She watched as Dahlia held court, regaling her admirers with tales of her latest philanthropic endeavors, basking in the glow of their adulation. Finally, as the gala reached its crescendo, Liana caught the eye of the event's MC. With a subtle nod, she signaled that she was ready. The MC tapped his microphone, commanding the attention of the gathered crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special surprise for you tonight." Dahlia beamed, no doubt expecting some grand gesture in her honor, but as the MC continued, his words cut through the revelry like a knife. "It has come to our attention that one of our esteemed guests has been engaged in a pattern of deceit and financial fraud." A hush fell over the room as all eyes turned towards the stage. Evidence has been brought forward that Dahlia Margits has been opening credit cards and taking out loans in other people's names, racking up thousands of dollars in debt to fund her lavish lifestyle. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Dahlia's face contorted in a mixture of shock and fury. "This is outrageous," she shouted, rising from her seat. "How dare you make such slanderous accusations?" But the MC was undeterred. "The proof is indisputable, Dahlia. Bank statements, loan documents, all bearing your signature and the names of your victims." With a flick of his wrist, the MC projected the damning evidence onto a large screen behind him. Liana's eyes locked with Dahlia's, and she saw the realization dawning. This was no mere accusation, but a carefully orchestrated takedown. You did this," Dahlia hissed, pointing an accusatory finger at Liana. "You ungrateful little worm." Liana simply smiled, reveling in the delicious satisfaction of watching Dahlia's world crumble around her. As the MC continued to lay out the breadth of Dahlia's crimes, the guests erupted into a frenzy of whispers and speculation. Liana could see the looks of disgust and disbelief on their faces, the realization that they had been duped by Dahlia's false pretenses. And in that moment, she knew she had won. Dahlia's precious reputation was in tatters, her social standing obliterated by the very scandal she had so carelessly courted. As security escorted a screaming, raging Dahlia from the premises, Liana stood tall, basking in the sweet taste of revenge. It was over. The lies, the manipulation, the emotional and financial abuse. She was free. And as she watched Dahlia's once charmed life unravel before her eyes, Liana knew that this was just the beginning. The reckoning had only just begun. In the aftermath of Dahlia's public humiliation, the dominoes began to fall. What had started as a revelation of financial fraud quickly spiraled into a full-blown investigation into Dahlia's business dealings and personal life. Reporters swarmed like vultures, desperate for any scrap of information about the once revered socialite's spectacular fall from grace. Liana found herself inundated with requests for interviews, but she remained steadfastly silent, content to let the facts speak for themselves. As the weeks passed, more and more skeletons tumbled from Dahlia's closet. Shady real estate transactions, questionable investments, even whispers of tax evasion. It seemed her entire life had been built on a foundation of lies and deception. Liana watched from the sidelines, a mixture of vindication and revulsion swirling within her. Part of her relished in Dahlia's downfall, the karmic retribution for the suffering she had endured. But another part of her couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity for the once mighty woman now reduced to a pariah. But her sympathy was fleeting, extinguished by the memory of Dahlia's callous disregard for her victims, her willingness to destroy lives in pursuit of her own selfish desires. As the legal proceedings against Dahlia dragged on, Liana found an unlikely ally in Reed. Despite his initial reluctance to accept his mother's true nature, the mounting evidence of her crimes had finally shattered his rose-colored illusions. "I'm sorry, Liana," he said one evening, his voice heavy with shame. "I should have believed you from the start." Liana regarded him coolly, uncertain if she was ready to forgive his complicity in Dahlia's schemes. "Better late than never, I suppose." Reed nodded, his gaze downcast. "I know I can never make up for what she did to you, for the pain she caused, but I want to try and make things right in whatever way I can." Liana considered his words, weighing the sincerity in his eyes against the lingering resentment in her heart. Finally she relented, recognizing that Reed, too, had been a victim of Dahlia's manipulation, blinded by his misguided loyalty. Together, they worked to untangle the web of Dahlia's financial misdeeds, tracing the paper trail of stolen funds and forged documents. With Reed's cooperation, Liana was able to recoup a portion of her lost savings and begin the arduous process of repairing her credit. It was a small victory in the grand scheme of things, but it felt like a weight had been lifted from Liana's shoulders. She was reclaiming her life, piece by piece, and leaving the toxic legacy of Dahlia's betrayal behind. As for Dahlia herself, her fate was sealed. Convicted on multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement, she faced a lengthy prison sentence and the prospect of financial ruin. The once untouchable doyenne of high society had been reduced to a cautionary tale, a reminder that no amount of wealth or status could shield one from the consequences of their actions. And as Liana watched the woman who had once held such power over her being led away in handcuffs, she felt a sense of closure wash over her. The nightmare was finally over, the debt of deceit paid in full. It was time to move on, to leave the ashes of Dahlia's ruination behind and forge a new path, one built on honesty, integrity, and the knowledge that justice, though often delayed, would always prevail in the end. As Dahlia's legal battles raged on, Liana found herself at a crossroads. The woman who had once held such power over her was now a mere shell, her influence reduced to a cautionary tale. Yet, even as Dahlia faced the consequences of her actions, Liana felt no sense of triumph. The wounds she had suffered, the betrayal, the financial ruin, the emotional turmoil, had left scars that would never fully heal. Especially when it came to Reed. Despite his efforts to make amends, to aid Liana in untangling the web of his mother's deceit, she couldn't shake the lingering resentment. How could she trust a man who had chosen his mother's lies over her truth time and time again? "I know I can never truly apologize enough for what happened," Reed said one evening, his eyes pleading with her to understand. "But I swear, Liana, I'm not that person anymore. I see my mother for who she really is now." Liana regarded him coolly, her expression impassive. "And who is that exactly? A master manipulator? A criminal? Because for a long time you seemed perfectly content to enable her behavior, even as it was destroying my life." Reed flinched at her words, but Liana felt no satisfaction in inflicting pain. She was simply stating the facts, the harsh realities that had once been obscured by Dahlia's tangled web of deception. "I was blinded," Reed admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "Blinded by my love for her, by the belief that she was acting in my best interests. It was a mistake, one that I'll have to live with for the rest of my life." Liana nodded, her jaw set in grim determination. "Yes, you will, because even though your mother was the architect of this nightmare, you were complicit in it. You chose her over me, time and again." Reed opened his mouth to protest, but Liana held up a hand, silencing him. "I'm not saying this to make you feel guilty, Reed. I'm saying it because it's the truth. And if we have any hope of moving forward, of salvaging what's left of our relationship, we have to confront that truth head on." A heavy silence hung in the air, the weight of their shared trauma palpable. Finally Reed spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're right. You deserve better than what I gave you. And if you can't find it in your heart to forgive me, to trust me again, I'll understand." Liana felt a pang of sadness, a bittersweet acknowledgement that sometimes love simply wasn't enough to overcome the wounds of betrayal. She had loved Reed, truly and deeply, but Dahlia's poisonous influence had corroded that love from the inside out. In the end, Liana knew what she had to do. As much as it pained her, she had to let go. Of the relationship, of the dreams they had once shared, of the future they had so naively envisioned. "I think it's best if we go our separate ways," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil raging within her. "Too much has happened. Too much damage has been done. I need to focus on healing, on rebuilding my life without the specter of your mother's legacy hanging over me." Reed nodded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I understand, and I want you to know that I'll always regret the pain I caused you, the choices I made that led us to this point." Liana reached out, squeezing his hand gently. "I know, and for what it's worth, I forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it just means letting go." As she watched Reed walk away, a chapter of her life closing forever, Liana felt a sense of bittersweet relief. The road ahead would be long and arduous, the scars of Dahlia's betrayal never truly fading, but she was free from the lies, the manipulation, the toxic cycle of abuse that had nearly consumed her. And in that freedom, she found the strength to start anew, to forge a path guided by hard-won wisdom and an unwavering commitment to truth and justice. For Liana had learned a harsh lesson, one etched into her very soul, that the price of deceit was ultimately paid in the currency of shattered lives and broken dreams, and she vowed never again to be the one left holding the bill. The phone rang shrilly, shattering the peaceful silence of the night. I fumbled for it, squinting at the bright screen. Unknown number. With a groan, I swiped to accept the call. "Hello?" I mumbled, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. "Jules! Oh, thank God you picked up." The familiar voice of my sister-in-law, Marla, crackled through the line, thick with panic. I sat upright, instantly alert. "Marla? What's wrong? Is everything okay?" No, it's not," she cried, words tumbling out in a frantic rush. "Listen to me, Jules. You need to take this seriously. Evan's been with you for the past 3 weeks. My brow furrowed in confusion. "What? Evan's not here. What are you talking about?" "He is. Check your messages." Marla insisted, her voice rising. "I told you weeks ago that he'd be staying with you for a while. This isn't a joke." I scrambled out of bed, clutching the phone tightly. "Slow down, Marla. I haven't received any messages about Evan staying with me." There was a momentary silence, punctuated by Marla's shaky breaths. "Oh God, I messed up. I really messed up this time." A tendril of dread snaked through me. "Marla, where's Evan? Is he okay?" I don't know," she whimpered. "I haven't seen him in weeks. I thought he was with you." My heart pounded as realization set in. Marla was reckless, prone to impulsive decisions, but this was a new level of carelessness. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm for both our sakes. "All right, listen carefully," I said, my voice firm. "I'm coming over right now. We'll figure this out together, okay?" Marla sniffled, the line crackling. Okay. Just hurry, please." I quickly threw on some clothes, grabbed my keys, and rushed out into the night. As I drove, my mind raced with 1,000 terrifying scenarios. Where could Evan be? Was he safe? And why would Marla lie about him staying with me? The questions swirled endlessly, fueling my growing sense of dread. But one thing was certain. I had to find my nephew and get to the bottom of this, no matter what it took. I pulled up to Marla's house, tires crunching on the gravel driveway. My heart thundered in my chest as I rushed to the front door and knocked urgently. After what felt like an eternity, Marla answered, her eyes red and puffy. She ushered me inside without a word. "Where's Evan?" I demanded, whirling to face her. "What the hell is going on, Marla?" She flinched at my tone, wringing her hands nervously. "I don't know. I really thought he was with you." "You said you hadn't seen him in weeks." I exploded. "How could you lose track of your own son like that?" Marla shrank back, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm a terrible mother, I know, but you have to believe me. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Before I could respond, the doorbell rang, making us both jump. Marla shot me a wary glance before hurrying to answer it. My breath caught in my throat when I saw who was standing on the porch, a disheveled Evan, clutching a small backpack to his chest. "Evan!" I gasped, pulling him into a fierce hug. "Where have you been? We were so worried." He mumbled something incoherent, gaze fixed on the floor. Marla hovered nearby, seemingly frozen in shock. "Come inside, honey," I said gently, guiding him towards the living room. "Can you tell us what happened?" Evan sank onto the couch, still refusing to meet our eyes. "Mom said I was going to stay with you for a while," he mumbled. "She told me at the last minute and shoved some clothes into a bag." My eyes narrowed as I looked at Marla, who had the decency to appear ashamed. "She just dropped you off without telling me?" I asked Evan, struggling to keep my anger in check. He finally looked up at me, eyes glistening with hurt. I knocked for ages, but no one answered. I didn't know what to do, so I just waited. A lump formed in my throat as the weight of Marla's negligence hit me. My own nephew, left abandoned on my doorstep by his reckless mother. "Oh, Evan." I pulled him into another hug, shooting Marla a venomous glare over his shoulder. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that. But you're safe now, I promise." As I comforted the distraught teenager, rage simmered within me. Marla had crossed a line, putting her child in potential danger with her selfish actions. In that moment, I vowed to do whatever it took to protect Evan from further harm, even if it meant going against my own brother's wife. A few days had passed since Evan's unexpected arrival, and the initial shock had begun to wear off. He had settled into the spare room at my place, seeming more relaxed with each passing day. Still, I couldn't shake the nagging sense that there was more to Marla's story. A sharp knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. I frowned, not expecting any visitors, and made my way to the entryway. Peering through the peephole, I was surprised to see Marla's next-door neighbor, Mrs. Wilkins, shifting nervously on my doorstep. "Mrs. Wilkins?" I greeted, cracking the door open. "Is everything all right?" The older woman offered me a strained smile. "Hello, Jules. I'm sorry to bother you, but may I come in for a moment? It's about Marla." My eyebrows shot up, and I swung the door open wider. "Of course, please." Mrs. Wilkins stepped inside, wringing her hands anxiously. "I've been meaning to talk to you for a while now," she began, voice lowered. "I'm terribly worried about Evan." My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? What's going on?" She hesitated, glancing around furtively before continuing. "I've noticed some strange behavior from Marla over the past few months. She's been leaving the house at all hours, sometimes not returning until dawn." I felt a chill run down my spine. "You're saying she's been going out all night and leaving Evan alone?" Mrs. Wilkins nodded grimly. "And that's not all. I've seen strange men coming and going from the house when Ray isn't home." The pieces began to click into place, and a wave of nausea washed over me. Could Marla really be so reckless, so utterly neglectful of her own child? "Have you spoken to Ray about this?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. The older woman shook her head. I didn't want to overstep or make accusations without proof, but I just couldn't stay silent any longer, not after what happened with Evan ending up here. I closed my eyes briefly, feeling a fresh surge of anger towards my sister-in-law. How could she put her selfish desires above the well-being of her own flesh and blood? "Thank you for telling me, Mrs. Wilkins," I said finally, meeting her concerned gaze. "I promise I'll get to the bottom of this." As the neighbor left, a newfound determination settled over me. Marla's actions were unforgivable, and I wouldn't rest until Evan was safe, no matter what it took. The revelations from Mrs. Wilkins weighed heavily on my mind as I dialed Ray's number. He picked up after a few rings, his voice tinged with concern. "Jules, is everything okay?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the difficult conversation ahead. "Ray, we need to talk. It's about Marla and Evan." There was a pause on the other end. "What's going on? Did something happen?" "I had a visitor today," I began, carefully choosing my words. "Mrs. Wilkins came by with some troubling information." I proceeded to relay the neighbor's account of Marla's late-night escapades and the revolving door of strange men. As I spoke, Ray's silence was deafening, punctuated only by his shallow breaths. Finally, he let out a shaky exhale. "Marla's been cheating on me?" The pain in his voice was palpable, and I felt a pang of sympathy for my brother. "That's not even the worst part, Ray. She's been leaving Evan home alone for hours, sometimes all night." A strangled sound escaped his lips, and I could practically envision him running his hands through his hair, a nervous habit he'd had since childhood. "How could she—" "Our own son." "I know," I said softly. "It's unforgivable, but we can't let her get away with this." There was a long pause, and for a moment I wondered if the call had dropped. But then Ray spoke again, his voice laced with a newfound resolve. "You're right. Enough is enough. We need to gather evidence, build a case against her." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I was thinking the same thing. We have to protect Evan, no matter what it takes. We spent the next hour strategizing, mapping out a plan to catch Marla in the act. Ray would install hidden cameras around the house, gathering undeniable proof of her infidelity and neglect. Once we had enough evidence, we would confront her and, if necessary, take legal action to ensure Evan's safety. As I hung up the phone, a familiar determination coursed through me. Marla's days of reckless abandon were numbered. She had messed with the wrong family, and now she would face the consequences of her actions. With Ray by my side, I was ready to do whatever it took to bring her downfall, all for the sake of protecting my nephew. Over the next few days, Ray and I put our plan into motion. He had installed hidden cameras throughout the house, strategically placed to capture any incriminating behavior from Marla. Meanwhile, I kept a watchful eye on Evan, ensuring he was safe and well cared for in my home. One evening, as I was helping Evan with his homework, my phone buzzed with a message from Ray. "You need to see this." A knot formed in my stomach as I excused myself and hurried to my bedroom, opening the video file he had sent. The footage was grainy but unmistakable. Marla stumbling through the front door in the early hours of the morning, clearly intoxicated. A strange man followed closely behind, his hands roaming over her in a way that made my skin crawl. I watched in disgust as they tumbled onto the couch, engaged in a heated embrace. The video cut off abruptly, but the damage was done. My blood boiled at the thought of Evan potentially witnessing such a revolting display. More videos trickled in over the following days, each one more damning than the last. Marla entertaining different men, often under the influence of alcohol or substances. Some nights she wouldn't return home at all. The evidence was overwhelming, but a part of me still held out hope that this was all a misunderstanding, a lapse in judgment that Marla would own up to and correct. That hope was shattered when Ray sent me the final video. It was early morning, the sun just peeking over the horizon. Marla's disheveled form appeared on the screen, stumbling into the house and collapsing onto the couch. Moments later, the unmistakable figure of a teenage boy entered the frame. Evan. My heart shattered as I watched my nephew approach his mother, concern etched onto his young face. Marla merely waved him off dismissively, her words slurred and incomprehensible. Tears stung my eyes as the video ended, and I found myself filled with a burning rage unlike anything I'd ever experienced. How could she treat her own child with such callous disregard? In that moment, any lingering doubts or reservations evaporated. Marla had proven herself unfit, unworthy of the precious gift of motherhood. She had sealed her own fate, and now it was time for her to face the consequences. I steeled my resolve, dialing Ray's number with trembling fingers. "It's time," I said, my voice hardened with determination. "We're going to put an end to this, once and for all." The tension was palpable as Ray, Evan, and I gathered in the living room, waiting for Marla to return home. The damning video evidence was queued up, ready to confront her with the harsh reality of her actions. Finally, we heard the telltale sound of her car pulling into the driveway. Ray shot me a resolute look, and I gave him a small nod of encouragement. This was it, the moment of reckoning. The front door burst open and Marla sauntered in, her movements sluggish and uncoordinated. She froze when she saw us assembled, her glazed eyes widening in surprise. "Ray? Jules? What's going on?" she slurred, barely able to form a coherent sentence. Ray stepped forward, his jaw set in a hard line. "We know, Marla. We have proof of everything." She blinked owlishly, swaying on her feet. "Proof of what?" With a flick of the remote, the first video started playing on the TV screen. Marla's face drained of color as the incriminating footage unfolded. Her drunken escapades, the parade of strange men, the night spent away from home. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Ray, I can explain." But Ray was having none of it. "Explain what, Marla? Explain how you've been neglecting our son, abandoning him for nights on end while you're off doing God knows what?" Evan flinched at his father's raised voice, shrinking back into the couch. My heart ached for the poor kid having to witness the sordid unraveling of his family. Marla's eyes darted around the room, a cornered animal seeking an escape. It's not like that, I swear. I just needed a release, you know? A break from the monotony. I felt bile rise in my throat at her pathetic justification. How could she be so callous, so utterly devoid of maternal instinct? A break? Ray spat, his voice dripping with disgust. At the expense of our child's well-being? You're a disgrace, Marla. Tears streamed down her face as the gravity of the situation finally seemed to hit her. Please, Ray, don't do this. I'll change, I promise. But it was too little, too late. Ray's mind was made up, his expression hardened with steely determination. No more lies, no more excuses, he said, his voice low and unwavering. I'm filing for divorce, and I'll be seeking full custody of Evan. Marla's anguished wails filled the room, but they fell on deaf ears. She had made her choices, and now she would have to face the consequences. As I watched Ray usher a shell-shocked Evan out of the house, I felt a strange sense of resolution wash over me. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but at least now there was hope. Hope for a better future, free from Marla's toxic influence. The fallout from the confrontation was swift and merciless. Within days, Ray had filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and Marla's blatant infidelity and neglect. The ironclad evidence we had gathered left her with little recourse but to comply. As the legal proceedings unfolded, Marla's carefully constructed facade crumbled around her. Word of her sordid escapades spread like wildfire through our close-knit community, and she found herself ostracized by friends and acquaintances alike. I'll never forget the look on her face as she arrived at the courthouse for the first hearing. Pale, haggard, a mere shadow of her former self. Gone was the confident, carefree woman I had once known, replaced by a broken shell consumed by the weight of her own transgressions. The judge, a stern-faced woman with little patience for Marla's excuses, made it clear from the outset that the evidence was damning. Ray's steady income and my own willingness to provide a stable home environment for Evan worked heavily in our favor. Mrs. Turner, your actions demonstrate a flagrant disregard for the well-being of your minor child, the judge stated, her voice ringing with authority. Based on the evidence presented, it is abundantly clear that you are unfit to retain sole custody. Marla's anguished sobs echoed through the courtroom as the judge rendered her decision. Ray would be granted full custody of Evan, with Marla permitted only supervised visitation rights. As for the financial ramifications, the judge showed no leniency. Marla was ordered to pay substantial child support, and the marital home, along with most of their assets, would be awarded to Ray to ensure Evan's continued stability. In the blink of an eye, Marla's world had been turned upside down. The lavish lifestyle she had grown accustomed to was snatched away, leaving her to face the harsh realities of her self-inflicted downfall. I watched as she exited the courthouse, enveloped in a cloud of shame and despair, hounded by the flashing cameras of reporters eager to document her disgrace. A small part of me felt a twinge of pity for the broken woman, but it was quickly overshadowed by a sense of justice served. Marla had made her choices, and now she would have to live with the consequences. Her reckless pursuit of fleeting pleasures had cost her everything: her marriage, her financial security, and most devastatingly, the emotional well-being of her own child. As I rejoined Ray and Evan, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over me. The storm had passed, leaving in its wake a newfound clarity and determination to build a better future, one where Evan could finally feel safe, loved, and nurtured in a way his own mother had failed to provide. Months passed in the aftermath of Marla's spectacular downfall. The dust had settled, and a new sense of normalcy began to take root in our little family unit. Evan, bless his resilient heart, seemed to thrive under the stability Ray and I provided. The haunted look in his eyes gradually faded, replaced by a renewed spark of life and hope for the future. I'll never forget the pride that swelled in my chest the day he brought home a glowing report card, his academic performance having taken a complete 180 from the previous year's struggles. Seeing him beam with accomplishment, finally free from the weight of his mother's neglect, was worth every ounce of effort we had poured into rectifying the situation. Ray, too, underwent a remarkable transformation. Gone was the broken, disillusioned man who had once stood by helplessly as his world crumbled around him. In his place stood a devoted father, determined to make up for lost time and provide the unwavering love and support Evan had been so sorely lacking. Our little family dynamic fell into an easy rhythm, with Ray and I tag-teaming to ensure Evan never felt alone or adrift. I relished my role as the cool, fun-loving aunt, introducing him to new experiences and indulging his artistic passions, while Ray provided the steady, reassuring presence of a doting father. Of course, not every day was sunshine and rainbows. Evan still grappled with the emotional scars left by Marla's betrayal, and there were moments when the pain became too much, manifesting in bouts of withdrawn silence or explosive outbursts. But we weathered those storms together, offering a united front of unconditional love and understanding. Slowly but surely, Evan began to heal, his once fragile spirit fortifying with each passing day. As for Marla, well, her existence had become little more than a distant echo, a cautionary tale of the depths to which selfishness and depravity could drag a person. The few times she exercised her court-mandated visitation rights, the encounters were strained and stilted, devoid of any genuine maternal connection. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity for the broken woman she had become, a mere shadow of her former self, cast adrift in a sea of her own making. Her once vibrant beauty had been worn away by the harsh realities of her new life, her eyes haunted by the weight of her mistakes. But those moments of fleeting sympathy were quickly overshadowed by the overwhelming sense of relief and gratitude that Evan had been spared from her toxic influence. He was safe, loved, and finally able to flourish, and that was all that truly mattered. As I watched him laugh and joke with Ray over dinner one evening, my heart swelled with a newfound sense of purpose. This, protecting and nurturing the ones we loved, was what family was all about, and I vowed in that moment to never take such a sacred bond for granted again. I sighed deeply as I stepped into the dimly lit dining room, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor. The savory aroma of roasted chicken filled the air, but the atmosphere felt chillingly tense. Wesley sat at the head of the table, his eyes fixed on his plate, while Jenna, our teenage daughter, sat beside him, her gaze glued to her phone. "You're late again, Elena," Wesley remarked coldly, not even glancing in my direction. "We couldn't wait any longer." I bit my lip, fighting back the urge to snap at him. It was our anniversary, a special occasion that should have been filled with warmth and celebration. Instead, the room felt suffocatingly cold, like the love had been drained from our relationship. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice strained. The meeting ran longer than expected. It was an important client, and I couldn't just walk out. Wesley scoffed, shaking his head in disgust. "Of course, work always comes first for you. Forget about your family's needs." Jenna remained silent, her thumbs tapping furiously on her phone screen, ignoring the tension brewing between her father and me. My heart sank, realizing that even my own daughter couldn't spare a glance in my direction. "That's not fair," I protested, struggling to keep my composure. "You know how hard I've been working to provide for us." "Provide?" Wesley sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "Or are you just using work as an excuse to escape your responsibilities as a wife and mother?" His words stung like a physical blow, and I recoiled, feeling as though the air had been knocked out of my lungs. I opened my mouth to respond, but Jenna suddenly slammed her hands on the table, startling us both. "Can you two stop fighting for once?" she snapped, her eyes blazing with frustration. "It's always the same thing every single night." With that, she pushed back her chair and stormed out of the dining room, leaving Wesley and me in an uncomfortable silence. I collapsed into the nearest chair, burying my face in my hands as the weight of the situation crushed down on me. Our anniversary, a day meant to celebrate our love and commitment, had been reduced to a bitter confrontation. Wesley's accusations echoed in my mind, each word a sharp barb that pierced my heart. Had I truly neglected my family in pursuit of my career? Or was Wesley simply lashing out, unable to accept my success? As the silence stretched on, I couldn't help but wonder if our marriage was beyond repair, a once-cherished bond now frayed and tattered, hanging by a mere thread. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into trying to mend the fractures in our family. I cut back on my hours at the office, delegating more responsibilities to my team and leaving work earlier each day. Despite my efforts, the atmosphere at home remained icy and tense. "I'm home," I called out one evening as I stepped through the front door, hoping for a warm welcome. Instead, I was met with silence, save for the faint sounds of the TV drifting in from the living room. I found Jenna sprawled on the couch, her eyes glued to her phone as usual. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile. "How was your day?" She barely acknowledged my presence, offering a noncommittal shrug. "Whatever." My heart sank at her dismissive attitude, but I refused to give up. "I was thinking we could order in tonight, just the two of us. Maybe catch up on that new show you've been raving about?" Jenna's eyes narrowed, and she let out a derisive snort, as if you'd actually stick around long enough to watch anything with me. Her words stung, but before I could respond, Wesley emerged from the kitchen, his expression stern. "Leave her alone, Elena. Can't you see she's not in the mood for your pathetic attempts at bonding?" I recoiled, stung by his harsh words. "I'm just trying to connect with our daughter," I protested, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Well, you're doing a terrible job at it," Wesley sneered. "Just like you've been a terrible mother, always putting your career before your family." Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes as his accusation pierced my heart. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but Jenna cut me off. "He's right, you know," she said, her voice laced with venom. "You're never around, always working late or on some business trip. Why should I bother trying to connect with you when you've made it clear your job is more important?" Her words felt like a physical blow, and I stumbled back, my vision blurring with unshed tears. Wesley placed a comforting hand on Jenna's shoulder, shooting me a triumphant glare. "See?" he said smugly. "Even your own daughter knows the truth. You've failed as a mother, Elena. Maybe it's time you accepted that and focused on what really matters to you, your precious career." With that, he turned and headed back towards the kitchen, leaving me standing there, utterly devastated. Jenna refused to meet my gaze, her attention already back on her phone. I retreated to the sanctuary of my bedroom, collapsing onto the bed as sobs racked my body. Their words echoed in my mind, each one a sharp dagger twisting deeper into my heart. Had I truly been so blind to the emotional neglect I'd inflicted on my own family? As the tears finally subsided, a steely resolve began to take root within me. I couldn't continue living like this, constantly belittled and denigrated by the people who were supposed to love me most. Something had to change. And if Wesley and Jenna couldn't see the sacrifices I'd made for our family, then perhaps it was time I made them open their eyes. The tension in our household continued to escalate, with each passing day feeling more suffocating than the last. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, I overheard Wesley's voice drifting in from the living room, his tone hushed and secretive. "Can't wait to see you again," he murmured into the phone. "This weekend, my place. Elena will be working late as usual, so we'll have the whole night to ourselves." My heart dropped into my stomach as the implications of his words sank in. Was he having an affair? The thought made me feel physically ill, and I nearly dropped the pan I was holding. Unable to ignore the burning suspicion any longer, I stormed into the living room, my face flushed with anger. "Who were you talking to?" I demanded, glaring at Wesley. He startled, nearly dropping his phone in surprise. "No one," he stammered, his eyes wide with alarm. "Just a business associate." "Don't lie to me," I hissed, my hands trembling with fury. "I heard what you said. You're seeing someone else, aren't you?" Wesley's expression hardened, and he let out a derisive snort. "And what if I am? It's not like you've been holding up your end of our vows lately." My mouth fell open in disbelief. "How dare you try to turn this around on me? I've been working my ass off to provide for this family." "Oh, spare me the martyr act," he sneered, his lips curling into a cruel sneer. "We both know your job has always been more important to you than your husband and daughter." "That's not true," I cried out, my voice cracking with emotion. "Everything I've done has been for you and Jenna." Wesley scoffed, shaking his head in disgust. "Keep telling yourself that, if it helps you sleep at night, but don't act so surprised or holier-than-thou when I find companionship elsewhere." His words cut deeper than any knife, and I felt my world crumbling around me. The man I had loved, the father of my child, was not only unfaithful but also cruel enough to twist the blame onto me. "You're a monster," I spat, my hands curling into fists at my sides. "How could you do this to our family?" "Our family," Wesley repeated with a mocking laugh. "What family? You've been absent for years, Elena, physically and emotionally. Don't act so surprised when the consequences of your actions finally catch up to you." With that, he turned and stormed out of the house, leaving me standing there in stunned silence. Tears streamed down my cheeks as the weight of his betrayal threatened to crush me. How had things spiraled so far out of control? What had happened to the man I had once loved, the man who had vowed to cherish and honor me? As the minutes ticked by, anger began to simmer within me, mingling with the heartache and despair. Wesley thought he could discard me so easily, cast me aside like a worthless burden. He was sorely mistaken. I may have been down, but I was far from out. If he wanted to wage war on our marriage, so be it. I would fight with every fiber of my being to protect what was left of my family and make him pay for his transgressions. Our next anniversary rolled around, and despite the turmoil in our relationship, I couldn't bring myself to give up entirely. I decided to plan a surprise dinner at home, hoping that a romantic evening might rekindle the flames that had once burned so brightly between us. As Wesley left for work that morning, I got to work transforming our dining room into an intimate setting fit for a celebration. I dimmed the lights, scattered rose petals across the table, and even splurged on an expensive bottle of his favorite wine. Hours later, as the sun began to set, I put the finishing touches on the meal, Wesley's favorite dishes lovingly prepared from scratch. My heart fluttered with a mixture of hope and trepidation as I heard his car pull into the driveway. "Elena?" he called out as he stepped through the front door. "What's all this?" I emerged from the kitchen, forcing a warm smile onto my face. "Surprise! Happy anniversary, darling." His eyes widened as he took in the romantic setting, and for a brief moment I thought I saw a flicker of warmth in his gaze, but it was quickly extinguished, replaced by a cold sneer. "You've got to be kidding me," he scoffed, shaking his head in disbelief. "You really think some fancy dinner is going to make up for everything?" My heart sank as his words pierced through my fragile hope. "I just wanted to do something special for us," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady, "to remind us of the love we once shared." "Love?" He let out a derisive laugh. "What love, Elena? You killed any chance of that a long time ago when you chose your career over your family." I flinched as if he had struck me, tears stinging my eyes. "That's not fair," I protested weakly. "I've tried so hard to make things right." "Save it," he snapped, cutting me off with a dismissive wave of his hand. "I'm not interested in your excuses or your pathetic attempts at reconciliation." With that, he brushed past me, heading towards the kitchen. I followed close behind, my heart pounding with a sinking sense of dread. As he reached for a glass from the cabinet, something on the counter caught his eye. A stack of receipts I had carelessly left out. He snatched them up, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the details. "What's this?" he demanded, whirling to face me with an accusatory glare. "Expensive dinners, hotel stays? Have you been squandering our money on some secret lover?" "What? No," I cried out, horrified by the implication. "Those receipts are from my business trips, I swear." But Wesley wasn't listening. His face contorted with rage, and he hurled the receipts at me, the papers scattering at my feet like confetti. "How dare you accuse me of being unfaithful when you've been sneaking around behind my back?" he roared, his voice trembling with fury. "You've ruined everything, Elena. Our marriage, our family, all because of your selfish ambition and lies." Tears streamed down my cheeks as I watched the man I had once loved unravel before my eyes, consumed by his own paranoia and anger. As he continued to hurl insults and accusations at me, I realized with a sinking feeling that our relationship might truly be beyond repair. Yet, even as my heart shattered into a million pieces, a tiny flicker of defiance began to burn within me. If Wesley was determined to destroy everything we had built, then I would make sure he paid the ultimate price. The aftermath of our disastrous anniversary dinner lingered like a dark cloud over our household. Wesley avoided me like the plague, barely acknowledging my presence unless it was to hurl another biting remark or accusation my way. One night, he stumbled through the front door well past midnight, reeking of alcohol and radiating a volatile anger that set me on edge. "Where have you been?" I demanded, my voice laced with a mixture of concern and frustration. Wesley fixed me with a venomous glare, his words slurring slightly. "Out. Not that it's any of your business anymore." I flinched at the venom in his tone, but pressed on. Of course it's my business. We're still married, whether you like it or not. He let out a mirthless laugh, shaking his head in disgust. Married? Please. Our marriage has been a sham for years, thanks to your selfish ambition. My heart clenched at his cruel words, but I refused to back down. That's not fair, and you know it. I've sacrificed just as much for this family as you have. Sacrificed? He spat, his eyes narrowing into slits. Don't make me laugh. You've been so consumed by your precious career that you've neglected your duties as a wife and mother. That's not true, I protested, my voice cracking with emotion. I've tried so hard to make things work, to be there for you and Jenna. Well, you failed, he sneered, cutting me off with a dismissive wave of his hand. Miserably. I opened my mouth to argue, but he pressed on, his words laced with venom. You want to know the real reason our marriage is in shambles, Elena? It's because you put your job before everything else. Before me, before our daughter. You were never truly present, always chasing after the next big promotion or business deal. Tears stung my eyes as his accusations cut deep, each word a sharp dagger twisting in my heart. That's not fair, I whispered, my voice trembling. But Wesley was relentless, his fury building with every syllable. If you want to save what's left of this family, there's only one solution, he growled, his eyes boring into mine with a frightening intensity. Quit your job, give up your precious career, and be the wife and mother you promised to be when we said our vows. My breath caught in my throat as the ultimatum hung in the air, suffocating me with its weight. Give up everything I had worked so hard for, sacrifice my dreams and ambitions, all to appease his bruised ego? Before I could respond, Jenna appeared at the top of the stairs, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and anger. Mom, don't listen to him, she cried out, her voice trembling. He's the one who's been ruining our family, not you. My heart constricted painfully at the sight of my daughter taking my side, finally seeing the truth behind her father's twisted words. But Wesley was having none of it. Stay out of this, Jenna, he snarled, whirling to face her with a terrifying rage in his eyes. This is between your mother and me. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I had endured his emotional abuse, his cruel manipulation for far too long. No more. With a steely resolve, I lifted my chin and met his gaze head-on. No, I said, my voice ringing with a newfound strength. I'm done playing by your rules, Wesley. I'm not going to quit my job or let you control me any longer. His eyes widened in shock, and for a fleeting moment I saw a flicker of fear cross his features. But it was quickly replaced by a mask of cold fury. You'll regret this, Elena, he hissed, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. Mark my words. But as I looked into the eyes of the man I had once loved, I felt only a sense of resolve and liberation. The shackles of his manipulation had finally been broken, and I was free to chart my own course, no matter the consequences. In the days following my defiant stand against Wesley, a new sense of determination took root within me. I was done being a victim, done allowing his manipulation and emotional abuse to dictate the course of my life. While he was at work, I began quietly gathering important documents, financial records, legal paperwork, anything that could help strengthen my position. I also opened a separate bank account, funneling a portion of my paychecks into it each month, building a nest egg for the inevitable day when I would need to strike out on my own. Whenever Wesley was home, I maintained a cool, cordial demeanor, refusing to engage in his attempts to reignite our arguments or bait me into submission. My newfound resolve only seemed to infuriate him more, his temper growing increasingly volatile with each passing week. One evening, as I was sorting through a stack of papers in the home office, Wesley barged in without warning, his face flushed with anger. "What are you up to in here?" he demanded, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. I met his gaze steadily, refusing to be intimidated. "Just going through some old files, trying to get organized," he scoffed, shaking his head in disbelief. "Don't give me that innocent act, Elena. I know you're planning something behind my back." "I have nothing to hide," I replied calmly, holding his gaze. Wesley's jaw clenched, and he took a menacing step forward. "Don't play dumb with me. I know you've been squirreling away money, probably planning to take off with some new boy toy you've been sneaking around with." My blood boiled at his baseless accusation, but I forced myself to remain composed. "That's absurd, and you know it. I would never cheat on you, no matter how strained our marriage has become." "Oh, really?" he sneered, his lip curling in contempt. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been planning to abandon your family for your precious career." I shook my head, refusing to take the bait. "That's not true, Wesley. I'm simply protecting myself and making sure I have options if things continue to deteriorate between us." His eyes widened with rage, and he slammed his fist down on the desk, making me flinch. "Options? You mean divorce? You really think you can just walk away and take everything we've built together?" "I don't want to take anything from you," I said, my voice strained but unwavering. "I just want a fair settlement and a chance to start over." Wesley let out a harsh laugh, shaking his head in disbelief. "Start over? Don't delude yourself, Elena. Without me, you'll be left with nothing, no money, no home, and certainly no custody of Jenna." A chill ran down my spine at the implied threat, but I refused to back down. "We'll see about that," I said, meeting his gaze defiantly. His eyes narrowed, and he leaned in close, his breath hot on my face. "You have no idea what you're up against, Elena. I'll bury you in legal fees and drag this out until you're destitute. And when it's all said and done, Jenna will never want to speak to you again." I recoiled from his toxic words, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. But before I could respond, a familiar voice rang out from the doorway. "That's enough, Dad." We both whirled around to find Jenna standing there, her eyes blazing with a protective fury I had never seen before. "Leave Mom alone," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "She's not the one destroying this family. You are." For a long moment, Wesley and I could only gape at her in stunned silence. Then, without another word, he turned and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him with a resounding crash. As the dust settled, I turned to Jenna, my heart swelling with a potent mix of love and gratitude. "Thank you," I whispered, reaching out to squeeze her hand. She gave me a small, tentative smile, and in that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, a united front against the toxic forces that had threatened to tear us apart. The tension in our household reached a boiling point in the days that followed. Wesley seemed to sense that I was preparing to make my move, and his desperation grew more palpable with each passing hour. One evening, as I was packing a bag with some essential belongings, he burst into the bedroom without warning, his face contorted with rage. "Going somewhere?" he spat, his eyes narrowing accusingly. I steeled myself, refusing to be intimidated. "As a matter of fact, I am. I'm leaving, Wesley. It's over." His jaw clenched, and he let out a harsh laugh that held no mirth. "You really think it's going to be that easy? That you can just walk out on me, on our family, without facing any consequences?" "I'm not walking out on our family," I countered, my voice steady despite the hammering of my heart. "I'm walking away from your abuse and manipulation. It's the only way to protect myself and Jenna." Wesley's eyes flashed with fury, and he took a menacing step forward. "Protect her? From what? Her own father? Don't delude yourself, Elena. Without me, you'll have nothing." I shook my head, refusing to be cowed by his threats. "That's where you're wrong. I have evidence, Wesley. Recordings of your admissions of infidelity, proof of your reckless spending and lies, more than enough to ensure a favorable settlement in the divorce." For a brief moment his mask of anger faltered, revealing a flicker of fear in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a sneer of contempt. "You think some flimsy recordings are going to scare me?" he scoffed. "I have connections, Elena, lawyers who will bury you in paperwork and legal fees until you're destitute, and when it's all said and done, you can kiss any chance of custody goodbye." A chill ran down my spine at the implied threat, but I refused to show any weakness. "We'll see about that," I said, lifting my chin defiantly. Wesley's jaw clenched, and he took a step closer, his eyes burning with a volatile intensity. "Don't underestimate me, Elena. I'll make sure you regret this decision for the rest of your miserable life." Before I could respond, a familiar voice rang out from the doorway. "That's enough, Dad." We both turned to find Jenna standing there, her eyes blazing with a mixture of fear and determination. "Leave Mom alone," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "She's not the one destroying this family. You are." Wesley's face contorted with rage, and he whirled to face her, his finger pointed accusingly. "Stay out of this, Jenna. This is between your mother and me." But Jenna stood her ground, her gaze unwavering. "No, Dad, I'm not going to stand by and watch you terrorize her anymore. She's been more of a parent to me than you ever have." Her words seemed to deflate Wesley, and for a moment he looked utterly defeated. But then his expression hardened once more, and he turned back to me with a cruel sneer. "Fine," he spat, his voice laced with venom. "Have it your way, but don't think for a second that this is over. I'll make sure you pay for this betrayal, Elena, one way or another." With that, he stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him with such force that the walls trembled. As the dust settled, I turned to Jenna, my heart swelling with a potent mix of love and gratitude. "Thank you," I whispered, reaching out to pull her into a fierce embrace. She clung to me, her body trembling with a mixture of fear and relief. "I'm sorry, Mom," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm sorry for ever doubting you, for taking his side." I squeezed her tighter, blinking back tears of my own. "It's okay, sweetheart. It's not your fault. He manipulated us both for far too long." As we held each other in that moment, I felt a newfound sense of strength and determination. No matter what threats or obstacles Wesley threw our way, we would face them together. A united front against the toxic forces that had once threatened to tear us apart. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but for the first time in years, I felt truly hopeful. With Jenna by my side, I knew that no matter what, we would emerge victorious. In the days and weeks that followed, my life was consumed by the divorce proceedings. True to his word, Wesley fought me tooth and nail at every turn, dragging out the process and burying me in a mountain of legal paperwork and fees. But I refused to back down, bolstered by the evidence I had gathered and Jenna's unwavering support. The recordings of Wesley's admissions, coupled with the proof of his infidelity and reckless spending, proved to be a formidable weapon in my arsenal. As the details of Wesley's transgressions came to light, his once pristine reputation began to unravel. Business associates and friends alike distanced themselves, appalled by his behavior and the depths to which he had sunk. Through it all, Wesley remained defiant, lashing out at me with bitter vitriol whenever the opportunity arose. But his words held less and less power over me with each passing day. "You think you've won, don't you?" he sneered during one particularly heated exchange. "Just wait until the judge sees the truth, that you're an unfit mother who abandoned her family for her career." I met his gaze steadily, refusing to be intimidated. "The only one who abandoned this family was you, Wesley, with your lies, your infidelity, and your emotional abuse. The truth is finally coming to light, and there's nothing you can do to stop it." His eyes narrowed into slits, and he leaned in close, his breath hot on my face. "We'll see about that. I'll make sure you regret this, Elena, even if it's the last thing I do." But his threats rang hollow, a desperate attempt to cling to the control he had once held over me. I had broken free of his manipulation, and nothing he said or did could change that. In the end, the judge's ruling was a resounding victory for me. Not only was I awarded a sizable portion of our assets, but I also gained primary custody of Jenna, with Wesley relegated to supervised visitation due to his volatile behavior and history of emotional abuse. As we emerged from the courthouse, Jenna wrapped her arms around me, tears of relief shining in her eyes. "It's finally over, Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "We made it." I held her close, my heart swelling with a sense of pride and accomplishment. Yes, we did, together. Off to the side, Wesley stood alone, his shoulders slumped in defeat. The man who had once held so much power and control over us was reduced to a mere shadow of his former self, his reputation and fortune in tatters. As our eyes met, I saw a flicker of something akin to fear cross his features. Fear of the consequences he now faced, the price he would have to pay for his transgressions. In that moment, I felt no pity for him, only a sense of justice and closure. He had brought this reckoning upon himself through his own actions, his own selfish desires, and now he would have to live with the consequences. As we turned and walked away, hand in hand, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, the weight of years of emotional abuse, manipulation, and turmoil. A new chapter was beginning for Jenna and me, one filled with hope, possibility, and the freedom to chart our own path. And as for Wesley, he would be left to grapple with the wreckage of his own making, a cautionary tale, of what happens when pride and selfishness are allowed to consume a person's soul. I didn't look back as we stepped out into the sunlight, surrounded by the promise of a brighter future. The past was behind us, and all that mattered was the journey ahead, a journey we would navigate together, stronger and more resilient than ever before.